use, especially in healthcare. And I think that is my goal, working with the House Republicans and Senate Republicans to deliver on these policies.
You say that is your role. Isn't your number one role to defend democracy? You are in the legislative branch. You're an elected politician. And I just wonder whether you are worried that one of America's leading political scientists says that what he sees in these early weeks of Donald Trump's second term is a slide into a new model of autocracy. He calls it competitive authoritarianism. There are still going to be elections, he says, but incumbent abuse of power systematically tilts the playing field against the opposition in this new America. You should be fighting against that, shouldn't you?
Well, listen, actually, we need to see who these think tanks are getting paid for. A lot of them from these same government programs that would try to see where corruption is. So I would take everything with a grain of salt. But my main role to save this republic. And Elon Musk and President Trump are strong allies. They understand that we're in deep trouble. But I need to make sure that the things that they try to find, the bad things that happen in government, will put it in the law. Because I agree, we are Article 1 branch. We have to have this law so it has more lasting effect, not just for one administration. And Congress needs to start exercising its power and responsibility. So that is my job, and I'll do my best to convince my Republicans and work with them that we have to have some courage to do the right thing for the country.
Congresswoman Victoria Spartz, I thank you very much for joining me on Hard Talk. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
That was Hard Talk. I'm Saroja Coelho. You're listening to CBC Radio 1. Have a great day.
Good morning, Manitoba, and hello, Winnipeg. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio. We're live in downtown Winnipeg on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on that app and YouTube. It is 3 minutes to 6 o'clock. We're on air with you on the morning show until 8:37. And if you have any problems this morning on your commute, you can call us at 788-3093. Once again, similar day to yesterday, a little slick underfoot, a little bit chillier than it has been the last few mornings. Let's say good morning to the team that made it in. Mr. Corey Funk, good morning to you. Corey is our show director and covers the commute on the show. Good morning to Mr. Abby Adeyemi. Abby is our technical producer and usually covers weather, but Corey's going to cover off weather today. And good morning to Mr. Kevin Nipatebo, who is saying hello from our control room as well, in there with Corey and Abby. Kevin is our YouTube producer. You might be watching the show streaming there, and if you are, make sure you say hello. All right, let's go to Lauren Donnelly. She is in this morning live in our news center and has your headlines.
Good morning. This week's discovery at the Prairie Green landfill has brought up strong emotions for those who have lobbied for a search. We'll hear from some of them at 6:30. And Manitoba Hydro wants to build a new gas plant. The CAO of Selkirk says he has the perfect place in mind. We'll hear more on that all coming up after World Report.
All right, thanks very much, Lauren.
Thank you.
So World Report is coming up here in 2 minutes' time, the latest in national and international news, so we'll get caught up on that. In the actual forecast today for Winnipeg, a 60% chance of flurries this morning. It should clear near noon, and the wind will be the story of the day. You can already feel it, and hear it. But winds will be northwest 50, gusting to 70 for most of the morning. Our temperature is actually going to fall this afternoon to minus 13, so it'll be chillier even than it is to start the day. Very similar conditions over in Brandon, and then up in Thompson, a sunny, clear day with a nice high of minus 16 degrees. Well, this morning, we are going to talk to a member of Winnipeg's Muslim community as she's gearing up for Ramadan. She'll give us a breakdown of what she has to say about how she's feeling today as she heads into the holy holiday. So stay tuned for that interview. In addition, in the first hour of the show, several world leaders have visited U.S. President Donald Trump in Washington now. We're going to hear about what they're hoping to achieve with all of the talks, and we'll run you through the latest. And the 97th Academy Awards are happening on Sunday. Do you have your favorite picked out for Best Picture? CBC's Jane Testar hit the street to find out what people have to say about the movies. So that's all coming up in the first hour. But right now, as I mentioned, it's time for World Report.
On Cue with Tom Power.
The Canadian actor Molly Parker has earned a reputation for playing some complex characters, be it her role in Deadwood, 6 Feet Under, or the movie Kissed. She'll tell you about her new series Doc and why she's drawn to characters who have, quote, lost everything.
I don't know what I did or who I am now.
That's coming up on Cue, followed by Commotion with Elamine Abdel Mahmoud on CBC Radio 1, the CBC Listen app, and everywhere you get your podcasts.
This is World Report. Good morning, I'm John Northcott. Ontario PC leader Doug Ford now has exactly what he asked for.
We have secured a strong, historic third majority mandate
Ford campaigned hard on the one topic that has brought Canadians together lately, standing up to the U.S. President Donald Trump. Jamie Strachan has more on Ford's path to victory.
Oh, thank you so much.
Ontario voters have handed Doug Ford the fresh mandate he was looking for. Ford called this winter's snap election against the backdrop of looming U.S. tariff threats, portraying himself as the only leader capable of standing up to Donald Trump.
This election, we asked the people for a mandate, a strong mandate that outlives and outlasts the Trump administration. Well, friends, the people have spoken.
The NDP will remain the official opposition at Queen's Park. Leader Marcedes promised to work alongside Ford in his tariff fight, but also hold his government accountable and make life more affordable for Ontarians.
And that is the job that we are going to do with our usual fight and our determination, but also with love and hope.
For the Liberals, it was a night of mixed results. The party gained seats and regained official party status, but leader Bonnie Crombie failed to win in Mississauga, where she was once mayor.
I commit to you that I'll stay on as Ontario Liberal leader so that I can keep fighting for you.
The Greens held the two seats they had coming into the election. Poll analyst Eric Grenier says the looming tariff issue defined this election.
Even when we weren't actually talking about the Ontario election, we were talking about the issue that Doug Ford wanted to run this campaign on.
Ford will now get his wish, a chance to outlive and outlast the Trump administration. Jamie Strachan, CBC News, Toronto.
Meanwhile, Donald Trump is hoping to finalize a rare earths and minerals deal with Ukraine today. He's meeting with Volodymyr Zelensky at the White House. For more on this, the CBC's Cameron McIntosh joins us from Washington. Cam, what are we expecting from today's visit?
Well, U.S. President Donald Trump and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky will sign a minerals agreement, giving the U.S. access to rare earth minerals. Now, Trump calls it a deal. Ukraine is calling it a framework, details to be worked out down the road. But Trump, claiming this will be worth hundreds of billions, is spinning it as a way to compensate U.S. taxpayers for supporting Ukraine, while insisting the presence of U.S. economic interests will give Ukraine security. According to Trump, this will make another invasion from Russia less likely.
We're going to be signing really a very important agreement for both sides because it's really going to get us into that country. We'll be working there. We'll have a lot of people working there. And so in that sense, it's very good. It's a backstop, you could say. I don't think anybody's going to play around if we're there.
Now, this is all being done as the U.S. and Russia lay the groundwork for a peace deal that Trump says is going well, even that he trusts Vladimir Putin. Europe, not so much. The UK and France are both proposing a European reassurance force to be deployed in Ukraine to keep the peace if there's a deal. Their leaders were both in Washington this week, asking for U.S. forces to back them if necessary. Trump is stopping short of that.
Well, Cam, as we anticipate this meeting between the two men, give us some background here on the relationship between Zelensky and Trump.
This is something to watch. Trump says it's good, then in the next breath admits it's been testy. Not only is Trump appearing to cozy up to Russia, starting peace negotiations without Ukraine at the table, he's implied Ukraine started the war. It didn't. Just days ago called Zelensky a dictator. Asked about that, Trump was pretty dismissive.
Do you still think that Mr. Zelensky is a dictator?
Did I say that? I can't believe I said that. Next question.
Now, Zelensky was initially reluctant to sign a minerals deal without firm U.S. military guarantees, even suggesting Ukraine join NATO. That's not on the table. We'll find out more about what's in this for Ukraine later today. And of course, shots are still being fired. This all hinges on a peace deal with Russia that hasn't been reached yet.
CBC's Cameron McIntosh joining us from Washington. Thanks, Cam.
My pleasure.
Greek protesters and police are clashing in Athens. Protesters are throwing rocks and makeshift bombs at officers in riot gear, and police are firing back with tear gas. It all started as a peaceful rally this morning, marking 2 years since a devastating train crash. 57 people were killed. Some rail officials are charged with crimes, but the protesters accuse Greece's conservative government of inaction. These are some of the biggest protests Greece has seen since the country's debt crisis more than a decade ago. Big cuts are coming to the Immigration Department in Ottawa, including the elimination of 60 litigation analysts. Hundreds of immigration court cases are already delayed in this country. And now the Workers' Union is warning those cuts will make the problem even worse. Rafi Boudjikanian reports.
Our folks are stressed and unsure of what's happening next.
Rubina Boucher is the president of the Canadian Employment and Immigration Union. She says it's been a month since her members have been bracing for the Federal Immigration Department to clarify where it will find more than 3,000 jobs to cut in the next 3 years. Now a picture is starting to emerge. CBC News obtained a copy of a letter officials sent to litigation analysts, telling them they have to choose between a buyout and possibly losing their jobs in year one of the government's 3-year plan. Boucher says the analysts are crucial in advising government lawyers on how to proceed in court cases.
These employees often work in tandem within the Justice Department, which is already facing significant pressures from the court system.
Those pressures include a backlog of close to 500 cases in Canada's 3 biggest cities, according to federal courts. Court administrators say they're missing some $35 million in their annual budget to deal with it.
There certainly are delays.
Kamaljit Kaur Lehul is with the Canadian Bar Association. She shares the union's concern laying off the analysts could make those delays worse.
They are providing a vital role.
The Immigration Department says it is hoping to achieve most staff reductions through attrition and internal redeployment, and it will reevaluate how to use existing resources as new pressures arise. Rafi Boudjikanian, CBC News, Ottawa.
There's a surge of measles across Canada, even more troubling when you consider that the federal government declared the disease eradicated in this country back in 1998. That resurgence is now pushing public health officials to do all they can to stop measles from making a big comeback. Jennifer Yoon reports.
We're sending messages, we're hosting clinics.
In southwestern Ontario, public health officials are racing to contain the spread of measles. There are 119 confirmed cases of the highly contagious disease in the province. It's the largest outbreak since measles was declared eradicated in 1998, after a high percentage of Canadians got vaccinated. But now, immunization rates have dropped, both abroad and in Canada, say public health authorities. Dr. Nin Tran is the medical officer at Southwestern Public Health, which has reported about half the cases.
Virtually all of our cases are those who have never been vaccinated against measles.
Across Canada, there are 156 confirmed cases in Ontario, Quebec, Manitoba, and British Columbia already this year. For comparison, last year there were 147 cases of measles in total. One Ontario child who had not been vaccinated against measles died of it in May.
I did meet that family. I was involved in the care.
Dr. Sarah Kahn is a pediatric infectious disease specialist at McMaster University.
It's devastating when you have to manage a vaccine-preventable disease that results in a fatality.
She's encouraging those who are hesitant to get the jab to speak with their doctors.
We have to confront this fear of specifically this vaccine.
Otherwise, Kahn says, measles could be back for good in Canada, especially as it spreads in community settings like schools and social gatherings. Jennifer Yoon, CBC News, Toronto.
And finally,
dance me to your beauty with a burning violin. Dance me through the panic till I...
Some of Leonard Cohen's personal belongings, including items of clothing, letters, and even a lock of his hair, are up for auction today. They're all part of items contributed by 2 of the artist's longtime friends. Akita Cohen's house in the Greek island of Hydra is estimated to fetch $3,000. You could probably buy a tweed cap that once belonged to Cohen for an estimated $900.
Let me see your beauty when
the auction will take place in Los Angeles. And that is the latest from World Report. This is the final day. We're asking you to follow World Report wherever you get your podcasts. And you can rate and review us as well. I'm John Northcott. This is CBC News.
and dance me to the end of love.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the show. This is Information Radio on CBC, 89.3 FM, 990 AM, on the app and YouTube. Thanks for joining us, and your forecast coming up in a moment. you have a couple of warning areas in Manitoba once again today as we dip a little bit colder than we have been the last couple of days. This hour on the program, we're going to talk to a member of Winnipeg's Muslim community. She's gearing up for Ramadan. She'll talk about how she's feeling heading into the holy holiday, so stay tuned for that. Also, we'll have a closer look at U.S. President Trump's policy changes and hear how they're affecting long-standing international alliances. So stay tuned for the discussion around what that looks like after just his mere weeks in office. And Marketplace is back. You might have heard this on World Report. They're talking about the murky world of misleading HVAC deals. So Rosa Marcatelli is going to join us with more information on their investigation. That's coming up a little bit later this half hour, right before 7. We have Lauren Donnelly in our news center today with our morning headlines for your Friday. Good morning.
Good morning. Hoping for closure, families of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls say emotions are running high. The province says crews searching Prairie Green landfill found possible human remains on Wednesday. We'll hear from one advocate for the search. And it's mixed reviews for a plan for a new fuel combustion plant from Manitoba Hydro. The CAO of the city of Selkirk says Hydro's old Selkirk generating station in East St. Paul would make a perfect site, while environmental activists say the province should focus on following through on the NDP government's push to phase out fossil fuels from energy production. I'll have more on those stories coming up in your next local CBC News at 6:30.
All right, thanks, Lauren.
Thanks, Marcy.
Corey Funk, how do we get to the end of February? It's the last day of February.
I know, and it's very February-ish outside today.
Agreed. Explain to the listeners why we're saying yes, it is.
Yes, well, we are kind of back to well within the below zeros right now. There's actually also extreme cold warning in effect for northern Manitoba, particularly around Lynn Lake, Brochet, Tuduli Lake, Gillam, Shamattawa area. We're talking about temperatures in the low -30s, and with the wind chill even colder than that. So look out for frostbite if you are up north this morning. There's also a snowfall warning in effect as well, kind of around the Manigatogan, Bissett, Nopaming area, Barrens River, Little Grand Rapids. By the end of this morning, you could have about 10 to 15 centimeters of snow. That also means probably some poor highway conditions as well. But here in Winnipeg, we're sitting at -6 right now. It's actually going to get colder as the day goes on. -10 is what we're going to be dipping down to today, with about a 60% chance of flurries. Windy as well. I felt it on my way in this morning. Winds northwest 50, gusting to 70 today. It's going to dip down to -20 overnight, and then warm up tomorrow, Saturday, to a high of just -8, but it will be sunny, so it's still quite a lovely day to get out, maybe get some tobogganing in. I bet you'll be nice and icy on the toboggan hills. As for the commute, fairly quiet overall. I will say, though, around Lac de Bonnie, though, I'm seeing on Manitoba 511 that there's covered highway conditions because of the snowfall, particularly in that area of eastern Manitoba this morning, with some poor visibility. So careful if you're on the highways around Lac de Bonnie, Nopaming areas, because there might be some treacherous conditions for you. We'd love to get some updates on that or anything else you're seeing out there. Give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number, 204-788-3093.
Corey's not the only one that's going to notice the wind this morning. I just checked winds at the airport are gusting up to 72 kilometers per hour already. So you're going to see the tree tops bending out there. Well, next on the program, tonight marks the start of the holy month of Ramadan. For the next 30 days, of course, Muslims all around the world will fast from dawn to sunset. Tasneem Valley is a member of our local community and Winnipeg's Muslim community as well. She says for her and others, Ramadan, of course, goes well beyond fasting. Ramadan Mubarak. Tasneem, nice to have you on the show.
Thank you. Good morning, Marcy, and Ramadan Mubarak to everybody who's observing. We start fasting tomorrow.
How are you feeling about this year's Ramadan?
So this year's Ramadan, is very important. Every year, Muslims actually pray that we are able to observe the next Ramadan. So this year, again, it's all about improving oneself. Fasting, it's the unique essence in fasting lies that it is invisible to others. So it makes it a sincere act of worship for God alone, between you and God, right? And it's not just physical, but it's also ethical and emotional, where, the Prophet warned us that it's importance of controlling one's speech, of being better in behavior. So we want to make sure it involves a true fast involves avoiding like all forms of sin, and not just merely abstaining from food and drink, and also keeping into consideration people who are suffering, not just yourself, but people who are suffering in your city, in the world, who are oppressed, and make sure that you can help them, because charity is a very important part of Ramadan as well.
You liken it, I think I've heard you liken it before to a bit of a boot camp almost for yourself. Has the way that you reflect on Ramadan, I mean, I should ask, how has the way that you reflect on Ramadan changed over the years for you, Tasneem?
So it has changed in the sense, like when I was younger, it was all about the ritual, right? So you don't fast, you don't eat, you don't drink, you extra prayers kind of. You're, breaking the fast with friends kind of thing. As the years have gone by, it's become more spiritual, more about self-improvement and how I can help improve maybe the lot of the community around me. Like hunger. This year we're looking at hunger is a huge thing. People are struggling with food insecurity, not just in Manitoba and Canada, but all around the world. So it has become more about not just closeness to Allah personally, but, enhancing community bonds. And then that makes that, I think, Ramadan every year profoundly more meaningful than it was the year before.
It's interesting because we just did a story with the over at the University of Manitoba with the Muslim Students Association there, and I mean they're in dire need of space, so they're going to be doing breaking of the fast, and when they have their gatherings there now, they're like hundreds of people, hundreds of students come, and they need space, and they're having this stressful situation where they're having to sort of hand out meals, but then people will go to effectively not be eating in community together, so that's tough for the students. What do you see in terms of overall in the city, growth in the Muslim community, and when you are at gatherings to break the fast and such, and are at prayer, is that reflected in other ways in how much our communities are growing?
100%. So before, like, let's just say even 3-4 years ago, we would go to the mosques or community gatherings, and everybody would essentially know everybody else, or you would know somebody who knew somebody. And then now there's people who've come and essentially we don't know them. Like, we know them, but not on a personal level, those close bonds. Mm-hmm. And we're still a small community. There's, I think, about maybe 35,000 Muslims all over Manitoba. And there's communities in Winkler, in Altona, in Brandon. So we're still connected because, again, like I said, the community bonds and personal improvements, these are two things that we work on during Ramadan. So those are still there. It's just, it's a larger and more fulfilling, let's say.
In terms of some of the notable events through the month, if somebody's sort of never really leaned into what different things are happening during the month, or maybe if somebody is new to community, Tasneem, and they want to know where they could go to find more information, where could they connect with community?
So there are several mosques in the area. You could go to any of their pages, so Manitoba Islamic Association, the Winnipeg Islamic Center, the Winnipeg Central Mosque. Everybody has essentially prayers 5 times a day. They will have community gatherings during the night where we pray Taraweeh, which is the nighttime prayer, a special prayer during Ramadan. On Saturday, so tomorrow, there is going to be an outreach iftar where we open the doors for anybody to come. You do need to register for it. It is free, but basically it will introduce people how we observe Ramadan. So, you break the fast, you pray, and then you share a meal together, and then you pray. It's basically just about improving yourself. And then the last 10 nights of Ramadan are particularly significant. And they do culminate in the night of decree, which we call Laylatul Qadr, which we try to, again, stay up all night, pray to Allah, ask for forgiveness, and also give charity, build community bonds.
I hope you have a wonderful, peaceful month. Are you already... Someone's trying to reach you. That's okay. No worries. Live radio. I wanted to ask you as the last question. Do you stock up on? Do you have favorite foods that you break fast with, Tasneem, that you stock up on already?
Yes, dates, absolutely. They're rich in fiber, rich in energy. So we are now going to experiment with smoothies this year. try to do date and banana smoothies to give us that energy boost and the fiber intake. And then, that's actually favorite is dates for us in our family.
I'll let you grab your phone. Thank you very much for your time early this morning.
Sorry about that. Thank you very
no
much.
worries.
And again, Ramadan Kareem to everybody.
Take care. That's Tasneem Valley on with us live. She's a member of Winnipeg's Muslim community.
Your neighborhood, your community, your country, your world, your news that matters, news that belongs to you. Your World Tonight, every night, 7 days a week on CBC Radio 1, on demand on the CBC Listen app, and everywhere you get your podcasts.
6:20 a.m. is the time right now. It is Friday, and it's the last day of February as well. We have a really interesting conversation coming up, and I'm really hoping that perhaps today you will dig out a photo and share with us a photo so we can maybe later on our YouTube stream even get some of these into our live show stream. We're specifically asking you about photos that you maybe otherwise would be hesitant to share. So let me explain what's coming up here after 7 o'clock. A lot of us want to get our good angles when we have a photo taken of ourselves. However, what if we didn't worry so much about that? What if we didn't worry so much specifically about that double chin that might show up in a photo? And they often show up when you're in moments of deep expression, throwing your head back or laughing or posing for that selfie with a bunch of friends. But maybe that's not what you post because you don't like how you look. Today, we're going to hear from a local photographer and body image educator who says, show me your double chin. Let's talk about it. And so she's going to join us after 7 o'clock to talk about a beautiful Instagram post that she put up to try to encourage people to really reclaim those double chin pics because you're probably smiling broadly in them. So let's see them. So we've posted a photo of her, Terry Hofer, as well as a photo that I otherwise probably wouldn't post publicly, to be honest, because I've got my big old double chin in there leaning back. But when you look at these photos, you're probably just going to see a couple of women smiling big. So if you want to post a photo of yourself and join in on this, we'd love to have you do that. I am Marcy Marcusa on Facebook, and that acts as a show page during the show. And you can see that posting there. And if you want to share photos, we would love to see them. And we'll explain more after 7 o'clock all about this. Right now it's -8. Light snow shower and some drifting in Winnipeg is what we've got. And that's because winds are north at 35 downtown and they are north at 72 kilometers per hour at the airport. So really blowing out there. -8. Brandon's mostly cloudy, -10. And Thompson a lot colder, -30. And it is clear right now up north. Well, next on Information Radio, you might have been following what's been happening in the United States. It's been basically a parade of leaders from all over the world, from French President Emmanuel Macron on Monday, British Prime Minister Keir Starmer yesterday, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky today. It seems that the world leaders are making pilgrimages of sorts to Washington, D.C. to meet with U.S. President Donald Trump. The diplomatic visits come as Trump continues to push international tariffs that would upset trading norms and foreign policy that disrupts the world order as we have come to know it. Now, for a closer look at these relationships between the U.S. and the rest of the world and how things are evolving right now, Anne Fitzgerald is with us. She's director of Balsillie School of International Affairs. She's professor of political science at Wilfrid Laurier University as well. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
So with these visits on the books and those that are to come, what in your view are world leaders sort of hoping to find as they when they go to D.C.?
Well, I think leaders like French President Macron and British Prime Minister Keir Starmer both came to make a solid stand for the European position. And I suspect we'll see more European leaders coming. And it's probably a good strategy to do this maybe once every couple of weeks or once a month at the moment, bring somebody like Meloni from Italy next. And the European position at the moment is one that's threatened by a hostile and expansionist Russia, the threat of trade tariffs on already struggling economies, and the threat of being on its own as far as European defense is concerned. I think the opportunity was also taken to stand for Ukraine and take a fundamentally different view of Russian President Vladimir Putin than the view that is and the words coming out of the White House at the moment. and also to do some fact correcting as well. Some of President Trump's statements concerning trade deficits, financial support to Ukraine, and in the UK's case, its support for freedom of expression have been publicly corrected. And I think it's been done in a very diplomatic way that keeps the relationship strong and intact, but it makes for a firm stand for the European continent. And lastly, both of those European leaders are pushing for security guarantees in the form of backfill for troops, which they have in principle agreed to send to Ukraine if peace is agreed.
It feels kind of lonely here in Canada watching these meetings. I think a lot of Canadians are watching, the meetings, and obviously Canada and Mexico have pushed back around these tariff plans to no avail. March 4th is still the date right now, next Tuesday, for Canada, and that 25%. I'm wondering to what degree are other nations willing to do the same to push back here?
Well, I think what other nations are doing at the moment is assuming that it's reciprocal tariffs plus. And that plus is important. And the plus for the UK and European countries is the VAT. The plus for a country like Canada is our digital services tax. And actually, whatever Donald Trump wakes up and feels like targeting. And I think this speaks to a bigger point. The tariff discussion is going around in circles at the moment. And it seems that the most sensible way forward is probably just to expect the worst in terms of percentage tariffs, as President Trump will probably continue to weaponize trade for the duration of his term. We did see yesterday that the UK seems to be progressively being let off the hook, that Mexico, Canada, Europe, and China are still very much in his sights. But the key thing is that President Trump is trying to bring jobs and money to the UK quickly. And this is all about a bigger strategy that the U.S. has to contain China and accelerate that containment strategy, because if they do so, they will conquer in the race to technology and economic supremacy. But this is a multi-pillared strategy. It concerns the Panama Canal, it concerns Indo-Pacific countries, it concerns breaking ties between Moscow and Beijing. It concerns a lot of things. And I think if one of those pillars falters, then the whole thing might come down. And so I think the White House is just, and his administration is just looking to see how the dust settles in many areas at the moment, and the reaction of the markets and consumer sentiment. And over the last few days, we have seen consumer sentiment in the U.S. start to wane. We have seen the markets come down as well. And I think President Trump is probably staying maneuverist at the moment on trade tariffs. And, we should just move forward expecting the worst, because it's an opportunity for economies like the Canadian economy to develop a plan for economic prosperity, which is not so dependent on the U.S.
Obviously, the big meeting today is Ukraine-U.S., and so there's this rare minerals deal that's in the works. I know the Ukrainian president, we just heard on World Report, is using the term framework. Trump is using the word deal. But obviously, there's massive tension over Russia as well. And how do you see the relationship between those three evolving? But maybe the more critical question is, given that all this is happening, where does this leave the EU?
Yeah, the relationship between Ukraine, U.S., and Russia is quite volatile, as one of the partners is always bound to feel hard done by, depending on what happens. We've already seen this with Ukraine in reaction to the U.S. meeting with Russia and Saudi Arabia, and with the security guarantees for Ukraine being left out of the mineral deal agreement. And the U.S. will feel hard done by if Russia doesn't honor its word and its commitment to peace. I mean, President Trump wants to be the broker of this peace. And Russia is going to continue feeling as though it got the raw end of the deal. And the reason for that is this. President Trump thinks that people value money the same way he does. But I would argue that President Vladimir Putin's legacy depends on land accumulation and a legacy of an expanded Russia while
That's clear.
keeping
Yeah.
people unified. So Europe is wedged in the middle. It is having to deal with decoupling and de-risking from China at the same time as it's dealing with a revanchist and expansionist Russia. And it also has an issue with the U.S. as far as its digital regulations are concerned. And the U.S. don't like this and sees it as a real barrier.
Complicated, and I apologize for asking a complicated question and now rushing you to get to the end of it. And I realize what time we are and we're late to getting to our news, but we'll see what happens with this meeting today. I believe 11 o'clock is the time in Washington. And thank you very much for your analysis today.
Pleasure.
That is Anne Fitzgerald, Director of Balsillie School of International Affairs and Professor of Political Science at Wilfrid Laurier University. Your news is next.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Lauren Donnelly in Winnipeg at 6:30. It's -9 with drifting snow at the Winnipeg airport. 60% chance of flurries this morning, gusting winds, temperature falling to -13 this afternoon. News of possible human remains at the Prairie Green landfill has brought up strong emotions for families of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. Crews made the discovery on Wednesday while searching for the remains of Morgan Harris and Marcedes Myran. They were among 4 women murdered by a serial killer in Winnipeg. Myrna Abraham is among those who have called for the search. Her sister Sharon, originally from Saugeen First Nation, is believed to be one of the victims of BC serial killer Robert Pickton. Her DNA was found at Pickton's farm in 2004, but not her remains. He was never charged with her murder. Abraham says she cried when she learned of the discovery at Prairie Green. She hopes the Myran and Harris families will have some closure.
I'm really, really hoping that the family has some kind of closure on bringing their loved one home, even if it's just remains. My heart is with them and my mind is with them. My prayers are with them.
Abraham says her family could not hold a proper memorial for Sharon because there are no remains. She says she will continue fighting for any family member who is searching for a missing or murdered loved one. The CAO of Selkirk says he has the perfect place in mind for Manitoba Hydro's proposed new gas plant right across the Red River in East Selkirk. Hydro plans to build a new power plant for almost $1.4 billion. It might run on natural gas. Dwayne Nicol, the Chief Administrative Officer for the City of Selkirk, says Hydro's old Selkirk generating station in East St. Paul would make a perfect site.
All the transmission infrastructure is there. The natural gas line is there. There are buildings on site, and even if those don't fit, there's lots of land to put something new on.
Hydro shut down the Selkirk gas plant in 2021. At the time, the Crown Corporation said it had enough electricity. 2 years later, Hydro said it had to double or triple its electrical capacity. It now says it faces winter power surges by 2029. A Brandon police officer has been charged after a man was hit by a police vehicle 2 years ago. It happened in September 2023 when police responded to a report of a man allegedly attempting arson. As he fled, the suspect was hit in front of Brandon Police Headquarters and taken to hospital, where it was found he had a broken arm. The IIU investigated and determined charges should be laid against the officer. Constable Myran Ham faces 1 count of each of assault causing bodily harm and dangerous driving causing bodily harm. Thompson is looking to diversify its industries beyond mining. The city hosted the Linkages Conference this week, exploring the future of northern Manitoba. Thompson Mayor Colleen Smook says she wants the city to get into cold weather testing, aviation, and modular home construction.
We've talked, with different people, whether it even be building modular homes to go out to the different communities. Because, right now you get homes that are built down south. It's not understood what they even need to be done for winter and for longevity up here.
Smook says Thompson was built as a mining town, and mining remains important today, but she wants the city to expand its hospitals, schools, and other government services in order to become a hub for the whole region. Finally, all good things must come to an end, and last night brought an end to the Jets' 11-game winning streak. Winnipeg lost to the Predators in Nashville 2-1. Neil Pionk tied it up in the first period, but Nashville regained the lead and carried that through to victory. The Jets will have a chance to turn things around when they host Philadelphia on Saturday. And that is your CBC News from Winnipeg.
All right, thanks, Lauren.
You're welcome.
Lauren Donnelly in our news center this morning. We're still atop the standings. We're going to talk about the Jets' previous a streak now that we lost last night, but still, right? 11 in a row. Amazing. What a season they've had. So we're going to have that conversation in the next hour of the show. Outside of sports even, we'll have a separate interview on it. It is 6:35 a.m., Friday, last day of February, and Mr. Corey Funk is in to cover weather and your morning commute. Hi, Corey.
Hello. Yes, it's a little bit more classic February weather out there this morning. Let's start here in Winnipeg, -8. Right now, we're going to be actually dropping throughout the day, heading for a high of, high, low. It's dipping down to -10 today. And windy. It's already windy at the airport. Winds gusting up to 72 kilometers an hour. And that's going to be more or less the vibes today. 6% chance of flurries here in Winnipeg. Yes.
I'm going to interject because we just got a call about that, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So David called Highway 15 between Enola and Dougal, said the wind is now just like whipping around that area so much that it's visibility is down to less than a kilometer. So gotta really take it easy.
And that's not surprising because we actually have a snowfall warning and just kind of poor weather warning in effect for that kind of area, kind of eastern Manitoba, as you kind of get east of Dougal and Enola, as you kind of go up into the Lac de Bonnie area, for example, up to Manigatogan. Snowfall warning effect. By the end of the day, you should see about 10 to 15 centimeters of snow. And Manitoba 501 also showing poor visibility there. So be careful in that region. Looking west right now, Brandon, you're sitting at -10. A good chance of flurries for you as well, but the sky's going to clear around noon. It is going to warm up to -8 today. Dauphin, you're -14 right now. Mix of sun and cloud for you today, clearing around noon. It's going to drop for you to -13 today, or warm up to -13 today. And Thompson, you are one of the many communities that are part of an extreme cold warning today, -30. Right now where you are. It is going to warm up to -16 today, but still quite cold. That wind chill is still going to feel more like -38. And there is a wind chill or a extreme cold warning in effect for much of Lynn Lake, Leaf Rapids, Puckatawagan, Tadouli Lake, Brochet, Gillam, Shamattawa. So we're talking about temperatures in the -30s. And, of course, wind chill makes it feel much, much colder, so look out for frostbite. Right now, Winnipeg, we are sitting at -8 at the Forks. As for the commute, I mentioned the highways around Lac de Bonnie. Haven't heard of any other major issues, but if you do want to give us a call, let me know what you're seeing out there. That number, 204-788-3093.
So you don't, for photos, we have this item coming up about the double chin photo and editing yourself out. And it's an interesting one because this is Terry Hoford, who's she does so much stuff in the community. She's a body image educator. She's a local photographer. So she's basically posted, she's posted all this series of photos on Instagram. She's got double chins in all of them. She said some of these are some of my favorite photos that otherwise I may not have, posted because I'm not seeing myself. Or so this is what happens to people. You don't see yourself or smiling in the photo, or you start to fixate on what's going on with your chin. And obviously society's programmed us to sort of to do that. So she's trying to take it back, take back the double chin photo. I was saying, Corey, you and I were talking about this in the office and just the nature of your body. You don't actually get a lot of bad angle double chin photos, right?
No, but I will say, as a guy, sometimes you do, you go through periods where you kind of, certain t-shirts kind of make your, your waist look different. And I have some pictures that I don't want shown that I've seen where t-shirt kind of looks like there's a little bit more going on around the belly than I'd like. There's different parts that I got my own things that I'm self-conscious about too.
So same discussion, different body parts.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, maybe we can invite people to post whatever photo it is that they otherwise might love, accept.
Yeah.
So for me, it's the chin for sure as well. Actually, for me, if I'm honest, I posted a chin photo because that can happen when I smile, I lean back. But for myself, it's more like I've got the side view thing. So it's like if you take a picture of me from the side, it's like you can see the full roundness of my bod. And I'm like, whoa, yeah, no, I won't post that photo. So we edit ourselves all the time.
But just got to embrace it, body positivity.
Yeah. And as Terry would say, this is how your family, your friends, your coworkers, your pets, your loved ones are looking at you. That's what they're seeing all the time. They're seeing you. So you see you. Could you do it? So we're doing a bit of a double chin photo challenge today. If you want to post, you don't have to, no pressure. If you want to post, you can post on my Facebook page and we'll get some we'll get some photos up there online for ourselves a little bit later. And we'll have a deeper conversation, though, about sort of where these ideas come from and how Terry says, you might approach thinking about it as well. And she's always not about pressure. She would say all of us have things that have to do with negative body image. It's just sort of, it's sort of finding a positive way through moment to moment. Chrisley Ramakan joins us now, and I heard you want to weigh in on this.
Oh, yeah. Just listening to your discussion. And, of course, everyone is self-conscious about something when it comes to their appearance, most people. But, I always have that thought where I take a picture and you're like, ugh, I hate it. But then, you look at it a few years later and you're like, you know what? That picture wasn't so bad. You always are so critical of yourself in that moment, I feel. But then when you look back at it, you're thinking maybe more about, the memories or how you actually did look okay at that time. And you probably shouldn't have been so hard on yourself.
That's really, really smart to say. That perspective is so interesting. For me, it was always about my weight, right? And I was always a big woman, and a big girl. So I had always a good, healthy acceptance to a certain extent, but then also it would always, if it came up in photos and such, it would be about the weight. And I would look back often and look back and think, wow, I remember in that moment feeling I was so fixated on how fat I was. And then I look back at the photo and I go, why was I doing that in that moment? Look at all the things that were going on around me. And then, by the way, as you said, I look beautiful, right? So yeah, it's perspective often, and it's wisdom, but we're way too hard on ourselves, all of us.
Yeah. And, some things, I've seen online is people aren't friends with you because of how much, that you don't have cellulite on your thighs or something like that. People aren't friends with you because of that. They're friends with you and they love you because of who you are. Right. So
I remember saying to a friend one time, they were like, I can't go to my reunion because everyone's going to notice that I put some weight on. So she was upset about her weight. And I said, yeah, they might. And then they won't care. They'll notice in the first 5 seconds because maybe like all of us, so-and-so got gray or so-and-so got a bit heavier or a bit slimmer, whatever. You notice. Yeah. Okay. And then you move on because you're so happy to see the person. You're there for the person. Yeah. So anyway, this is a really interesting discussion. Terry Hofford, if you've never heard her speak on this, she's much more articulate than I'll ever be. So after 7 o'clock or on the app later is where people can check that out. So you should post a photo, Chrisley, on our Facebook page. Join in. I found one for myself in the yard where I was enjoying a sunny day with my cheesy hat on. We are here to talk about more serious things and maybe, unfortunately, more negative things as well, because banks are involved in almost every part of our economy. They lend money, they manage investments. This week, we saw the big banks in Canada open their books. What story are the results telling us?
Well, you know what? All 6 of the big banks actually beat analyst expectations in the first quarter as, the economy chugged along through the end of January, and that's even despite the threat of tariffs from the U.S. So banks got a boost from trading revenues that shot up thanks to heightened market activity after President Donald Trump was elected in November. And earnings were also helped by the lack of any concrete tariff policies as of January 31st. So, banks were not forced to set aside any money for loan defaults. That could happen if people are affected by tariffs. But banks say they are ramping up loan loss provisions if tariffs do come. And bank leaders did say the threats are having an effect, though. So consumers and especially businesses are holding off on big spending purchases right now just because of all of the economic uncertainty. But bank executives say the impact of tariffs are going to depend on, the size of them, how long they last, and noted there are ways for businesses to respond. So it's not going to hit all at once.
Let's move to another story. There's a countrywide consumer boycott of Amazon. There's a call for this. What are the details on it?
Yes, so NDP MP Charlie Angus is joining workers in calling for the boycott to protest the online retail giant's closure of 7 warehouses in Quebec. So the closures have eliminated thousands of permanent full-time jobs, along with jobs at subcontracted suppliers. Angus and the union officials say Amazon should pay proper severance to those people who have been laid off. And they also say the federal government should cancel all contracts with Amazon and force the company to pay back any federal subsidies. So roughly 230 Amazon employees in Laval, Quebec, unionized last May, and it was actually the first unionization drive at an Amazon operation in Canada. And though Amazon has dismissed claims that the closures are connected to union efforts and insists the moves was about boosting efficiency.
And let's move to news about another large tech company this morning. Why are there fears that Canadian company Shopify is going to move to the States?
Yeah, well, that's because Shopify has listed a U.S. address alongside its Canadian headquarters for the first time in an annual regulatory filing with the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission. So the e-commerce software business names both its hub in New York and its site in Ottawa as principal executive offices in this filing. And an analyst with TD Cowen spotted the shift and has alerted investors to the fact that the filing also features a U.S. employment identification code. So filings with the SEC dating back to 2017 for the company have only listed the Ottawa location and were typically made under the foreign designation rather than the domestic one. And Shopify has also reorganized how it reports some of its data to flip the geographic breakdown of the company's assets from mostly Canadian to mostly the U.S. And the analyst has mused that the move is meant to, help Shopify gain membership to certain U.S. indexes. But a company spokesperson says it is a voluntary way to align Shopify's disclosures with its, software peers. And, this filing change comes amid a fierce debate in Canada over capital drift to the U.S., stoked by President Trump's protectionist America First policy agenda.
What's going on in the markets this Friday, Crystal?
In Europe, markets are slipping as traders react to fresh tariff threats from President Trump. Germany is down, the UK is up, France is down. In Asia, markets are falling, so Japan, Shanghai, and Hong Kong are all down. Oil is down 82 cents to $69.53 US per barrel. Gold is down $15.80 to $2,860.80 US per ounce. And the dollar is up 0.01 of a cent to 69.3 cents US.
We'll talk to you next month because today's the last day of February. We'll talk to you on Monday.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks, Marcy.
That's Crystal Round-Lacam with business news. It is -8 in Winnipeg. And next on CBC, whether you're in an Oscar pool or just planning to watch the Academy Awards, they are coming up on Sunday. And CBC's Jane Testar this morning wanted to know which movie the general public thinks will bring home Hollywood's biggest prize. So here's her unofficial poll from the streets.
So we've got Honora, The Brutalist, A Complete Unknown, the Bob Dylan one. Right. Conclave, the Pope one, Wicked, Dune Part 2, Emilia Perez, The Nickel Boys, The Substance, and I'm Still Here.
Okay, there's definitely too many for Best Picture. How do you see them all? You can't. But I actually think it's going to be The Brutalist that wins, even though I haven't seen that one. It just seems to be getting the right amount of buzz. So, I could see the AI issue over Adrian Brody's performance causing a problem, but I still think it's going to win.
Buildings were devised to endure such erosion, the Danube's shoreline.
What a poetic reply.
Man, everything's got a scandal this year, hey?
It really does. Yeah, I would have said Emilia Perez would take it, up until about a month ago.
I think it's going to be Dune. It's going to be Dune Part 2.
What makes you say that?
I love Timothée Chalamet and Zendaya, so, personally, I think that was such a great movie.
I am Paul Muad'Dib Atreides, Duke of Arrakis!
I think that Wicked is going to win because it's so popular and Ariana Grande did a good job. Yeah.
So I think Wicked's going to win. I've been thinking about it for a long time, and me and my coworkers have been calling that, so we'll see.
Got any money riding on it?
Nope, but I'm willing to bet $200 on that. Okay, I take that back. I'm too broke. Maybe 50.
The Substance.
Oh, I just liked that. I loved seeing Demi Moore. Like, obviously, I am young enough that I didn't grow up, like, seeing her in the culture as much, but there was just something so wonderful about seeing an older woman just really embody this role. And I think, like, especially after we had Michelle Yeoh win for Everything Everywhere All at Once, it would be lovely to see this resurgence of, like, older women who are actors who get to have fun. They get to be weird, they get to have hot dogs for fingers, they get to turn into monsters. Like, let older women be weird little freaks.
Just leave me alone!
I haven't watched any of those movies.
Any? Are you sure? There's
Any
so many.
on the list? No. No.
I don't really keep up with the Oscars.
You haven't watched any of these 10 movies?
I don't think so. Isn't that what the Oscars always do? They always pick movies that no one has ever seen.
It's bleak, it's cold outside. I've been at home rewatching sitcoms. I can do the bleak Oscar-nominated stuff when it gets a little warmer out.
I think Honora's going to win.
Okay.
I think Honora's going to win because it's won the Palme d'Or. It's won the Producers Guild Award, and that's a good forerunner of Best Picture, at least over the last couple of decades it is.
So you want to get married to me, Vanya? You want me to be your little wifey? Yeah?
Yes. I would like to say, though, that one of my favorite movies that didn't even make the list of Best Pictures is Sing Sing, because you got to love a good motion picture about the power of art and how you can get through life believing in yourself and through the art that you produce.
CBC's Jane Testar was out polling the public on their Oscar favorites ahead of Sunday. The 97th Annual Awards will air on Sunday. I'm old school. I think they ruined it when they went to 10 nominees for Best Picture. I mean, who can even keep up with all of that? I don't know. I like when there were fewer pictures to choose from. But it is 9 minutes to 7 o'clock now on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and on YouTube. World Report's coming up at 7 o'clock. And one of the stories you're going to hear, we actually have a full interview on next, because Marketplace is back. And today they're looking once again at the murky world of home heating deals, revealing how consumers who sign up for savings are still getting surprises instead. They looked into hefty loans that come with broken promises of rebates, energy savings, and free service, all under the eye of a government that's making confidential deals with offenders. Marketplace's Rosa Marcatelli joined me to explain.
Good morning.
So your investigations have been exposing these bad HVAC deals for years, yet many people just continue to get sucked in. What is happening?
It is really mind-boggling. So a huge issue for a lot of people who tell us that they've been hooked into tens of thousands of dollars in loans or contracts after getting sucked into bad deals for home heating and cooling equipment. We're talking about things like furnaces and water heaters, and then recently it's expanded to doorbell cameras. The list goes on and on. So Marketplace brought about 80 people together in one room at CBC to show how pervasive this issue is. All of these people say they were taken by the same company. It's called Provincial Smart Home Services. They say the company promised government rebates, lower energy bills, and more, and then didn't deliver. And that's not all, Marcy. After signing with this company, these customers were locked into massive loans with skyrocketing interest rates they say they knew nothing about, with a completely different company, a company they'd never heard of and never agreed to do business with. Some of these customers tell us that their signatures were even forged. So here are just a few of the people we spoke with and the amount that they're on the hook for.
I'm from Waterdown, Ontario, and I paid $32,000 to Provincial Home Services.
Hi, my name is Ariana, and I'm here with my dad, Juan, and he signed a contract for $32,000.
We signed a contract for $33,500.
My contract was $34,000.
For $35,000.
Jim Ball, Burlington, Ontario. We signed a contract for $50,000.
Wow.
Yeah, you signed. That's a lot of money, and that's just a few of the people that we had in that room. In all, that group of 80 people is on the hook for more than $1.5 million. And keep in mind, that's one HVAC company. There are a lot out there that are problematic. Good ones as well, of course. So just a tiny fraction of the Canadians out there stuck owing a lot of money. Provincial Smart Home Services is now facing charges under the Ontario Consumer Protection Act. The company says it's shut down, but that is no help to its customers. People like Wendell Mohammed, who are still on the hook for these loans. Wendell himself owes more than $33,000.
Well, I mean, like everyone here, we're all very angry. But I think in the end, I'm also greatly disappointed in the government system. What exactly is the government or anyone doing to control these financial institutions that take advantage of people? And when is this going to stop?
Provincial Smart Home Services says it's done nothing wrong. It says client claims stemming from buyer's remorse are not valid. That's a direct quote from the company to Marketplace. It tells us it's not responsible for any interest, or rather for interest rate changes by finance companies.
Now, that case aside, why are consumers being left so exposed to problem HVAC companies?
Yeah, it's interesting because it seems to be a problem that government can't get a handle on. So some provinces have taken steps to try and stop HVAC companies, or the problematic ones, from taking advantage of people. For example, door-to-door sales of HVAC equipment has been banned in some parts of the country. Other areas now require special permits or licenses to sell door-to-door. But these efforts don't seem to be doing much to curb the problem. You know, in Ontario, where many of the provincial smart home customers live, the government banned door-to-door sales of HVAC equipment in 2018. Then in 2022, after Marketplace exposed how these companies were still making millions off the backs of unsuspecting customers, the government banned something called a notice of security interest, similar to a lien. Bottom line, that they make it hard for homeowners to remortgage or sell their homes without paying these HVAC companies a lot of money. Those changes, though, don't seem to be working, given how many people across the country are still reporting that they were misled into bad HVAC contracts.
And why?
Well, experts tell us it's simple. I'll let you listen to what lawyer Bethany Prescudo told us. She's from a group called the Advocacy Center for the Elderly.
There just aren't any punishments that match the crime. People are being let off the hook if they're being punished at all.
Yeah, she tells us this is a persistent problem even when charges are laid. And that's because instead of pursuing those charges, the government will make confidential deals with problem HVAC companies. This is how it'll often play out. The government will drop the charges and remove problem companies from a public consumer watch list, a list that is out there so people can see if a company is on the government's radar and if they really want to do business with them. So in exchange, these companies have to pay restitution to some of their customers who were taken. The government won't say how much or how many people actually got paid. Here's more from that recent exchange I had with Bethany at her office in Toronto. Who does that protect when the government won't tell us what those details are, won't tell people?
It protects the HVAC dealers and their directors who've been charged.
Why is that a problem?
It's a problem because it's the consumers we need to be worried about protecting.
Where does it leave consumers then? It's a fair question.
Yeah, I mean, after all this, they're in the dark. You know, many still getting misled into these bad contracts. The Ontario government tells us it does have penalties in place, but when we asked how it plans to better protect consumers, it didn't respond.
All right, Rosa, thank you very much.
Thanks for the time.
Rosa Marcatelli from CBC's Marketplace for the full investigation and to hear why problem companies can keep operating under the government's nose. Tune into CBC Marketplace tonight at 8 o'clock on CBC Television and anytime on CBC Gem. Lauren Donnelly is here now. It is 3 minutes to 7 o'clock. She's in our newsroom more correctly with our headlines this morning. Hi.
Good morning. Manitoba Hydro should go back to the drawing board on its plan to build a new fuel combustion plant. That's the message from one environmental activist who says net zero should be the goal. And envisioning a new economic future for Thompson, the northern city is looking to diversify its industries beyond mining. We'll hear why one consultant believes tourism could hold promise. Your next local CBC News is after World Report.
All right. Thanks, Lauren.
Thanks.
Windy today. That's the story of the day. -8 right now. Winds are northwest at 72 kilometers per hour at the airport at points this hour. They were gusting. Today, our temperature is going to fall actually to -13 this afternoon and a chance of flurries this morning. We already have a light snow shower out there in Winnipeg. Although I have to say, in parts of the city, just a beautiful sky coming up. Really looks like a spring day. It's not the case all over Manitoba this morning. We have an extreme cold warning for Lynn Lake, Brochet, Tuduli, Gillam, Shamattawa. We're looking at a bitterly cold Arctic ridge coming with temperatures in the low -30s, as well as snowfall warning for southern Manitoba, swaths around south central Manitoba happening today. 10 to 15 centimeters expected. So take it easy depending where you are. Check the highways before you go out. Visibility could be affected, especially, of course, loose snow or snowfall and the high winds. We already got a call from Highway 15 between Enola and Dugald saying the wind is making it really challenging to see. Less than a kilometer, David said, as he was trying to travel along. So call us and update the commute if you need. 788-3093. Coming up in the next next hour, we're going to talk about showing your double chin. We'll talk to a local photographer and body image educator who's trying to reclaim that and also just normalize it. Some people just genetically have double chins as well. Also, the Winnipeg Jets dominating in the NHL standings despite a loss last night. We're going to celebrate some of that success. And we're going to talk about what it's like to live in parts of Winnipeg's inner city as violence right now is a challenge.
Today on The Current.
But does forced treatment actually work? Well, the evidence is far from clear.
Alberta is making it possible to force people with addictions into treatment, believing this will save lives. Critics worry about violating rights and are asking, why not increase voluntary treatment spaces first? A conversation coming up on The Current.
The Current with Matt Galloway. This morning at 8:37, 9:07 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app.
This is World Report. Good morning, I'm John Northcott.
We promise to do whatever it takes to protect Ontario, and I'm so proud of the support we received.
Doug Ford is returning as Premier of Ontario with his third majority mandate. He campaigned hard on standing up against U.S. tariffs, and it seems to have resonated with voters. Jamie Strachan has more on Ford's path to victory.
Oh, thank you so much.
Ontario voters have handed Doug Ford the fresh mandate he was looking for. Ford called this winter's snap election against the backdrop of looming U.S. tariff threats, portraying himself as the only leader capable of standing up to Donald Trump.
This election, we asked the people for a mandate, a strong mandate that outlives and outlasts the Trump administration. Well, friends, the people have spoken.
The NDP will remain the official opposition at Queen's Park. Leader Marit Stiles promised to work alongside Ford in his tariff fight, but also hold his government accountable and make life more affordable for Ontarians.
And that is the job that we are going to do with our usual fight and our determination, but also with love and hope.
For the Liberals, it was a night of mixed results. The party gained seats and regained official party status, but leader Bonnie Crombie failed to win in Mississauga, where she was once mayor.
I commit to you that I'll stay on as Ontario Liberal leader so that I can keep fighting for you.
The Greens held the two seats they had coming into the election. Poll analyst Eric Grenier says the looming tariff issue defined this election.
Even when we weren't actually talking about the Ontario election, we were talking about the issue that Doug Ford wanted to run this campaign on.
Ford will now get his wish, a chance to outlive and outlast the Trump administration. Jamie Strachan, CBC News, Toronto.
Meanwhile, in Washington, Donald Trump is hoping to finalize a rare earth and minerals deal with Ukraine today. He's meeting with Volodymyr Zelensky at the White House. For more on this, the CBC's Cameron McIntosh joins us from Washington. Cam, what are we expecting from today's visit?
Well, U.S. President Donald Trump and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky will sign a minerals agreement, giving the U.S. access to rare earth minerals. Now, Trump calls it a deal. Ukraine is calling it a framework, details to be worked out down the road. But Trump, claiming this will be worth hundreds of billions, is spinning it as a way to compensate U.S. taxpayers for supporting Ukraine, while insisting the presence of U.S. economic interests will give Ukraine security. According to Trump, this will make another invasion from Russia less likely.
We're going to be signing really a very important agreement for both sides because it's really going to get us into that country. We'll be working there. We'll have a lot of people working there. And so in that sense, it's very good. It's a backstop, you could say. I don't think anybody's going to play around if we're there.
Now, this is all being done as the U.S. and Russia lay the groundwork for a peace deal that Trump says is going well, even that he trusts Vladimir Putin. Europe, not so much. The UK and France are both proposing a European reassurance force to be deployed in Ukraine to keep the peace if there's a deal. Their leaders were both in Washington this week, asking for U.S. forces to back them if necessary. Trump is stopping short of that.
Well, Cam, as we anticipate this meeting between the two men, give us some background here on the relationship between Zelensky and Trump.
This is something to watch. Trump says it's good, then in the next breath admits it's been testy. Not only is Trump appearing to cozy up to Russia, starting peace negotiations without Ukraine at the table, he's implied Ukraine started the war. It didn't. Just days ago called Zelensky a dictator. Asked about that, Trump was pretty dismissive.
Do you still think that Mr. Zelensky is a dictator? Did I say that? I can't believe I said that. Next question.
Now, Zelensky was initially reluctant to sign a minerals deal without firm U.S. military guarantees, even suggesting Ukraine join NATO. That's not on the table. We'll find out more about what's in this for Ukraine later today. And of course, shots are still being fired. This all hinges on a peace deal with Russia that hasn't been reached yet.
CBC's Cameron McIntosh joining us from Washington. Thanks, Cam.
My pleasure.
Greek protesters and police are clashing in Athens. Protesters are throwing rocks and makeshift fire bombs at officers dressed in riot gear, and police are firing back with tear gas. But it all started as a peaceful rally this morning, marking 2 years since his devastating train crash. 57 people were killed. Some rail officials are charged with crimes, but the protesters accuse Greece's conservative government of inaction. It's an issue consumer protection officials can't seem to get a handle on. More and more Canadians are coming forward after getting duped into pricey and unfair contracts for home heating and cooling equipment, all under the watch of a government that's supposed to be protecting them. Here's Rosa Marcatelli of CBC's Marketplace.
My name is Stacy, and I agreed to a contract with Provincial Smart Home Services initially at $27,000.
Marketplace brought more than 80 people together to tell their stories about being taken by the same company, Provincial Smart Home Services.
Jim Ball, we signed a contract for $50,000.
In all, they owe more than $1.5 million. They say Provincial made false promises about government rebates, lower energy bills, and more when they bought heating and cooling equipment for their homes, and then locked them into these massive loans with financing companies they never agreed to do business with. Rosalina Pasagan is one of those customers.
It's like this is a nightmare for us. We can't sleep.
Provincial Smart Home Services is now facing charges under Ontario's Consumer Protection Act. The company says it followed all the rules, and it's now shut down. But that's no help to its customers, who are still on the hook for those loans. Customers like Wendell Mohammed.
We're all very angry. In the end, I'm also greatly disappointed in the government system. When is this going to stop?
Bethany Pascudo is a lawyer and advocate.
There just aren't any punishments that match the crime. People are being let off the hook if they're being punished at all.
The Ontario government says it does have financial penalties in place, fines up to $250,000. When asked how it plans to better protect consumers, it didn't respond. Rosa Marcatelli, CBC News, Toronto.
And for the full investigation, you can watch Marketplace tonight at 8 p.m., 8:30 in Newfoundland on CBC TV and CBC Gem. There's a surge of measles across Canada, even more troubling when you consider that the federal government declared the disease eradicated in this country back in 1998. That resurgence is now pushing public health officials to do all they can to stop measles from becoming and making an even bigger comeback. Jennifer Yoon reports.
We're sending messages, we're hosting clinics.
In southwestern Ontario, public health officials are racing to contain the spread of measles. There are 119 confirmed cases of the highly contagious disease in the province. It's the largest outbreak since measles was declared eradicated in 1998, after a high percentage of Canadians got vaccinated. But now, immunization rates have dropped, both abroad and in Canada, say public health authorities. Dr. Nin Tran is the medical officer at Southwestern Public Health, which has reported about half the cases.
Virtually all of our cases are those who have never been vaccinated against measles.
Across Canada, there are 156 confirmed cases in Ontario, Quebec, Manitoba, and British Columbia already this year. For comparison, last year there were 147 cases of measles in total. One Ontario child who had not been vaccinated against measles died of it in May.
I did meet that family. I was involved in the care.
Dr. Sarah Kahn is a pediatric infectious disease specialist at McMaster University.
It's devastating when you have to manage a vaccine-preventable disease that results in a fatality.
She's encouraging those who are hesitant to get the jab to speak with their doctors.
We have to confront this fear of specifically this vaccine.
Otherwise, Kahn says, measles could be back for good in Canada, especially as it spreads in community settings like schools and social gatherings. Jennifer Yoon, CBC News, Toronto.
And finally, Some of Leonard Cohen's personal belongings, including items of clothing, letters, and jewelry, are up for auction today. They're all part of items contributed by two of the artist's longtime friends. The key to Cohen's house in the Greek island of Hydra is estimated to fetch some $3,000. Even a lock of hair containing some strands of Cohen, a locket containing some strands of Cohen's hair for another $3,000. The auction will take place in Los Angeles.
With a burning violin, dance me through the panic.
And that is the latest from World Report. This is the final day. We're asking you to follow World Report wherever you get your podcast. And you can rate and review us as well. I'm John Northcott. This is CBC News.
To the end of love.
Well, we made it to the end of February, everyone. Welcome to the last day and welcome to Friday. Good morning. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is a morning show on CBC Information Radio, 89.3 FM, 990 AM, on the app and on YouTube. A windy day ahead. Our temperature is actually going to fall in Winnipeg. This hour on the program, get my good angle, would ya? We've all said that when having our picture taken, but what if every angle is your good angle? We're going to try to reframe photography with a body image educator who says she wants to see your double chin. Let's talk about that. So stay tuned. We will talk about it this half hour. And you're posting and taking ownership of all the photos that otherwise maybe you would delete on our Facebook page this morning. So we'll share some of your stories as well throughout the program and some of those photos. In addition, this hour, the Jets might have lost last night, but they continue to dominate the NHL standings. We'll get a rundown on that. And we're going to get a perspective on what it's like to live right now in some of Winnipeg's inner city neighborhoods. There's been some escalating violence, and some residents say they're worried about the safety of their surroundings. So we're going to talk to an inner city man who's also a parent about what he thinks can be done to help the situation and just what his day-to-day life is like right now. You might have heard that harrowing story of that poor elderly lady that got assaulted. I mean, she was just going to get a milk at the grocery store, and we've heard police warning about gang escalations in some cases. And so we're just going to talk to a resident to touch base with people living in our community about how they're doing. Right now, let's get to what is happening in the news. We have Lauren Donnelly in for Heather Wells this morning. Hi, Lauren.
Good morning, Marcy. A Brandon police officer is facing a number of charges after a suspect was hit by a police car in 2023. The province's police watchdog has concluded its investigation into that incident. We'll hear what it found. And exploring northern futures. This week, Thompson hosted the Linkages Conference. The city's leadership wants to expand its industries beyond mining, exploring avenues from aviation, cold weather testing, modular home construction, and tourism. Those stories and more all coming up in your next local newscast at 7:30.
All right, thank you, Lauren.
You're welcome.
Corey Funk is here with weather and traffic.
Yes, -10 right now at the Forks. It's going to stay there for most of the day. 60% chance of flurries here in Winnipeg. Going to dip down to -20 overnight and warm up to -8 sunny tomorrow for Saturday and just get warmer from there as the weekend goes on. Snowfall warning in effect for Manitoba area, Bissett and Opaming. So heads up there by the afternoon, probably about 10 to 15 centimeters of snow you can get. As well, there's an extreme cold warning in effect for northern Manitoba around Lynn Lake, Brochet to Dooley Lake, Gillam, Shamattawa. We're talking about temperatures in the -30s, wind chills even colder. So be careful, look out for frostbite. As for the commute, haven't heard any major issues, though. Have heard about on the commuter line about very poor visibility around Highway 15, Dugald and Nola area, probably because of all that snow that's coming down just kind of northeast of there around Lactabani area as well. So just be careful on those highways. Also, the Forks River Trail skating trail is still closed, but varying conditions on the walking trails and things like that. So heads up there. If you see anything else going on, give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number 204-788-3093.
Well, how many times have you avoided having your picture taken, or maybe you've been asked to be cropped out of a family photo, all because your double chin or your body rolls were visible? Now, our first reaction to an undoctored picture of ourselves might be to cringe. Some people might add a filter. Someone might go so far as actually to look into plastic surgery to alter your body, because often society makes us feel a certain way about our appearance. But one local photographer says there's more to your double chin, my double chin, our double chins, than just fatness. Terry Hoford is a body image educator, and she joins us now via Zoom. Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
So tell me a little bit about this, because you posted, and people watching on YouTube are going to see your beautiful post on Instagram to effectively celebrate double chins. You posted this beautiful post on Insta. What prompted it, and when do you think we became afraid of our double chins?
Yeah, well, I talk frequently about just accepting our bodies as they are. It's something I've been doing for the last decade with my photography and so on. But as far as when we started to probably dislike that part of ourselves, I know the 70s, 80s, and 90s were kind of the height of diet culture, where we learned that being bigger is bad, and women specifically have been taught to be smaller and more subdued through that era. So I'm sure if you look back, there was also probably information about that, but that was kind of the crux of it, because then it was those mothers, for the most part, mothers that impacted the daughters that now have a really hard time seeing parts of themselves in photographs.
And did that ring true to you ever in your own journey?
So I was quite lucky, because my mom didn't actually subscribe to diet culture, which I always say I grew up very blessed. As a child of the 80s and 90s, my mom never really talked about her body image in front of me. However, and I asked my sister for permission to talk about her, she struggles with her double chin. So I was asking her questions about why is that something you struggle with? For me, it wasn't an issue, because I always grew up as a bigger child. So I had to learn early on that my body's just a body, it's doing its job, and to kind of accept that fact and look beyond myself as a body. But my sister grew up in more of a societally acceptable body. So it's harder for her to see her body change as she ages, change with motherhood and things like that, because she used to fit into the very narrow mold that most of us are taught we should fit into. So even though we both came from the same mother, I think the different bodies that we grew up with made a difference with how soon we had to accept ourselves.
It's interesting, because I know that I would say I grew up always as a bigger woman, always, couldn't fit the kids' clothes, always in the plus clothes. And so my body acceptance has always been quite positive as well. My mom also was really supportive, but my face has always presented slimmer. And so I do find I self-select photographs a lot, where even, if I'm laughing, I'll see the double chin before I see the expression on my face. And what a shame. That's actually what you post about a little bit as well, that, how people feel when they're absorbing, looking at themselves. People are now paying money to get rid of double chins. What do you say to someone who would share with you that they're taking pains to even, alter themselves?
So I always like to make it very clear, especially as a body image educator, that I never want to fault somebody for doing the thing that they think they need to do in order to find confidence or feel good about themselves in a society that expects them to do that. And because, your body, your choice, that's what we want to perpetuate as much as possible. And so it does fall in that line. So instead of judging somebody for wanting to get a surgery or change their body in any way, instead, I think we need to look at the society that makes them feel that they need to do those things in the first place. Now, if somebody came to me saying they wanted advice about, like, should I do this, should I not do this, I think I would just try to give them a different perspective on their double chin or whatever part of themselves they're curious about changing. And help them see that, like, our double chin specifically are like genetics for the most part, because everybody of any size can have a double chin. It doesn't matter what size you are, but it's what that body part represents that is the thing that's getting us stuck, right? And we've been taught that if you have a double chin, it means that you're fat or bad, and fat is bad, or you're bigger and being bigger is bad. So we need to get rid of any evidence of that. And so I would just encourage them to understand, like you said, the photos of you where you have double chins or where you're being an expressive human. Like, would you take away your joy just so you don't have a double chin? I would hope not. And also, I would like to remind people, like doing an exercise, which I talk about in my TED Talk, like take your phone and take a photo from that angle. Realize that you're still alive. People still love you. And to be honest, that's the angle that your children, your grandchildren, your babies, your pets see you at. And they love you. They don't, nobody cares at the end of the day. Like, nobody cares.
Isn't that a funny thing, right? That was part of your post on Insta where you were like, by the way, this is actually how everyone's seen you the whole time. So surprise. And they're seeing you. They're not seeing chin.
Yeah, exactly. Because again, when we look at ourselves in photographs or in a mirror or otherwise, our body parts come to represent certain parts of ourselves that we dislike. But when we look at somebody else that maybe has a very similar body to us, and we're like, oh my God, you're so beautiful. That's because we see their inherent goodness and, you know, the beautiful magic that other people are. But it's harder for us to see that in ourselves because we know all of our shame, our pain, our trauma, and so on. And we've been taught that, well, if you feel those things, it's a result of your body not adhering to beauty standards, which isn't true. So we have to do the work to kind of recognize, what am I actually afraid of? If it is that you are afraid of aging, why is that? Let's get curious about it. Who taught you that having a double chin is not a good thing? Where did you first learn that? Because these ideas were not yours to begin with. You learned them from somebody else.
I'm not picking on the younger generation because I think this is prevalent, as we've discussed, in all generations. But I am wondering, because the younger generation would have grew up more visually and with the option for filters and such, how important it is that we own this and move body positivity forward to make sure that we can provide strength, especially women to women. And I shouldn't say that. Maybe just provide strength generation to generation.
Yeah, because now they're showing, like, statistically that men are also like suffering more with body image than they ever have before. And because of the, like you said, the visual representations that we're seeing on what is an acceptable body through social media and the media in general, which has always been slightly problematic, and not showing the different diversity. So one of the things that I do recommend people to do is actually don't aim for body positivity, because I think that sets us up to fail, because that implies like a pendulum swing from like body dislike all the way over to body love. That's a pretty far distance to go. Instead, I encourage people to aim for body neutrality, which is more like, yeah, I don't love my double chin, but it's not going to stop me from showing up in the photos with the people that I love. Right? So it's like, you don't have to love it, but it is part of you. And the more photos you see of yourself or other people with double chins or whatever part of yourself you're insecure about, over time, your brain's going to create evidence that counteracts the continuous evidence that we have that certain bodies are better than others, and realize that, no, it's just part of you. It's not good or bad. It literally is just part of you.
Love that. Love all of it. Just before you go this morning, what are you hearing from other people who either don't have a problem with it or about the impact of your post?
So a big part of it is that people needed to be reminded of it, first of all, because body image is one of those things that doesn't go away. Like, even as a body image educator, I still get the negative thoughts. I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions out there with people, is that one day I'll never think about my body. No, we've been conditioned for the first half of our lives to think about our bodies, especially those of us socialized as women. And as a result of that, those thoughts are still going to come up. But what we can do when we get those thoughts is we have an opportunity to challenge them through curiosity instead of judgment. And again, ask questions. Who taught me this? Where did I learn this? Is this going to get me the outcome that I desire? Like, if if you're on a trip with your family and you're being photographed, or if you're friends or your wedding, which is a common one, what is the outcome you want to have? That you want to be present during your photos? Then you need to kind of get curious about why that part of yourself is holding you back so much, I think. So just ask questions.
Well put. Thank you very much, Terry. Appreciate you sharing with us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
That's Terry Hofert. She's a body image photographer, educator rather, and a local photographer. I spoke with her yesterday about all of this. Please check out her beautiful Instagram post we were referring to if you weren't watching the show streaming on YouTube just now, so you weren't seeing it coming up. The name TeriHofford, and you were already showing us those photos that you otherwise might delete because we're reclaiming ourselves this morning through photographs. So whether it's a double chin or otherwise, you're posting on Facebook. We'll get to some of your stories and post a little bit later in the show. But that's Marcy Marcusa on Facebook. It acts during the show as a show page.
Listen up to groundbreaking sounds. Listen up to new and emerging artists. Listen up to what's happening with your favorite musicians. Subscribe now to CBC Music's newsletter, Listen Up. Keep tabs on everything happening in music. News, exclusive live performances, the best new songs, and so much more. Subscribe now at cbc.ca/listen up.
You might want to check the highways before you go out. It's really windy out there in Manitoba this morning. So 511, we already got a call from between Enola and Newgold saying visibility was less than a kilometer. We also got Ann calling the commuter line saying there's an illegally parked truck on westbound Jubilee. This is just past the Riverside, causing some big backups. So keep left, zipper merge to get around. Thank you, Ann, for calling. 788-3093 is the commuter line. 7:25, it is time for Morning Sports. Scott Reguer joins us now via Zoom. How you doing this morning?
I'm doing well, thank you. Happy Friday.
Yeah, happy Friday. Well, I think the Jets fans are still going to be happy overall, but we did lose a close one in Nashville last night, and with that goes our winning streak.
Yeah, ending at 11 games, which is a new franchise benchmark, of course. This one against the Predators, Marcy, a close game, 2-1. Nashville prevails. Neil Pionk briefly tied things up for Winnipeg. A tripping penalty, though, would lead to the Predators scoring the winner. Kyle Connor, who saw his personal point streak snapped last night as well, says that while the winning run was fun, the team's moving on.
The way the season's going, you got to focus on the next opponent. Focus on whoever's coming in next and at home, and be better and make the adjustments we can, but you can't dwell on it. Yeah, it was obviously a pretty fun streak to be a part of, and obviously historic in this franchise, and it was cool to look back on. But it's you got to move on. You got to be ready. You got to adapt, and you got to be able to fight what's next.
And what is next? The Philadelphia Flyers, who are in Winnipeg for a game tomorrow before the Jets head back out on the road again.
We're going to have a full interview about the Jets actually coming up after the news at 7:30, just because it is, we are still looking so strong. And we're at that point in the season where we can start to feel really good about that.
You betcha.
Let's go to swimming now. There's big news where Summer McIntosh is concerned.
There is. McIntosh Marcy is changing coaches. The phenom from Toronto has been guided by Brent Arkey since she was, a young girl in braces. Under Arkey's watch, she has become one of the sport's biggest stars, winning 3 gold medals alone at last year's Paris Olympics. But McIntosh says it's time for a change.
I think the reason I've grown so much outside of the pool is what I've accomplished in the pool and learning through those experiences. I mean, the first world record I broke was a complete shock, and I think that's probably one of my favorite memories. Moments like that, and then going to the Olympics and coming back with 4 medals, it makes you kind of grow up in a way, I think, and you learn so much about yourself and about who you want to become out of that. Coach Brent's been by my side that whole time, so of course I owe a lot of that to him.
That is McIntosh speaking with CBC, with Arkey there alongside her. Arkey himself, Marcy, says he's more of a developmental coach and that it is time for a new voice for Summer. That voice could well be Bob Bowman, who, among other things, helped Michael Phelps become the greatest swimmer of all time. McIntosh is going to visit Bowman in Texas about it next month.
And in curling, the Brier gets underway today in Kelowna. What's standing out for you there?
Well, how long it's been, Marcy, since the National Men's Championship has been held in the biggest city in BC's picturesque Okanagan Valley. The last time? Well, have a listen to this.
It took 7 years of tireless effort by dedicated Colonians to bring the Briar to their city. Ogopogo, legendary longtime resident of the lake, will undoubtedly find the rumble of stones and the crack of brooms a bit different to the usual water sports.
Now, if you didn't grow up, isn't that great?
That's fantastic.
If you didn't grow up on the West Coast, as I did, you might be unfamiliar with Ogopogo. That's BC's equivalent to the Loch Ness Monster, and he's been scaring visitors since before 1968 when that Briar commercial was put together. As for the pebbled ice, will any competitor strike fear the way Rachel Homan has amongst the women? The Team Canada skip went undefeated in winning her second Scotties in a row. Brad Gushu, though, a chance to do something even more impressive. That's claim a fourth straight Briar. Nobody's done that before, and Gushu begins his quest today in Kelowna. Once again, we have multiple Manitoba rinks at the Briar. Winnipeg's Matt Dunstone, ranked number 1 in the country. He pre-qualified for this tournament based on his rankings from last year. Dunstone yet to win a Briar, though. And then you have Reid Carruthers, also of Winnipeg. He has won a Briar, albeit not as a skip. He was part of the last rink from the province to win a Briar that Jeff Stoughton was the skip of. So things begin today in Okanagan. Dunstone taking on Kevin Cooey's Alberta-based rink. Carruthers up against the host team from BC.
What's with the music in the 60s and all that, right?
So good.
Everything's fine, nothing to see here.
Got a few thoughts on that. We're a bit more cynical today for various reasons.
Take care. We'll talk to you on Monday.
Okay.
That's Scott Regier with CBC Sports. You're listening to Information Radio here on 89.3 FM, and your news is next.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Lauren Donnelly in Winnipeg at 7:30. It's -11 with light snow shower at the Winnipeg airport. A 60% chance of flurries this morning, gusting winds, temperature falling to -13 this afternoon. This week's discovery at the Prairie Green landfill has brought up strong emotions for those who lobbied for a search. The province says crews found possible remains on Wednesday while searching for the remains of Morgan Harris and Marcedes Myran. Indigenous leaders, advocates, and community members called on governments to search Prairie Green. Tanya Dawn McDougall of St. Teresa Point was one of them. She took part in a silent statement when then PC leader Heather Stephenson visited the community in 2023. She says people wanted to send a message to the then Tory government to search the landfill, not just to provide closure for families, but to respect the dignity of human lives.
A landfill is not the ending for any person. Any person. And I think being able to possibly take your loved one home, that's what they've been wanting. And I know that's what they've been wanting. That's what they've been praying for.
McDougall says news of the discovery may bring grief for other families of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. A Brandon police officer faces a number of charges after a suspect was hit by a police car in 2023. The police watchdog concluded its investigation into the case that happened on September 24th, 2023. Police were responding to a call about an attempted arson. The suspect ran away from the scene and the police car hit him in front of the BPS headquarters. The man was taken to hospital with a broken arm. The independent investigation unit determined charges of assault causing bodily harm and dangerous driving causing bodily harm should be laid against Constable Myran Ham. A Toronto environmental activist is urging Manitoba Hydro not to build a new fuel combustion plant to meet the province's short-term electricity needs. Hydro has proposed a $1.4 billion generating station that may be fueled by natural gas. Keith Brooks is the program's director for environmental defense. He says Manitoba should make do with its existing gas plant in Brandon and try to follow through on the NDP government push to phase out fossil fuels from energy production.
So you've got one gas plant, keep that one around in case of an emergency. But the goal should be to take your very best effort at trying to fully decarbonize the grid to get to that net zero goal.
Brooks says Manitoba Hydro should focus more on energy conservation and building renewables like wind farms. Hydro has a plan to partner up with Indigenous wind farms, but still says it needs a combustion plant to avoid winter power shortages. Health officials say Ontario is in the midst of a measles outbreak. 78 measles cases have been confirmed over the last 2 weeks, bringing the total number this year to more than 140. Public Health Ontario is calling it by far the largest outbreak the province has seen since measles were considered eliminated in Canada in 1998. Earlier this month, Manitoba public health officials confirmed 5 cases of the virus in this province. They said those were connected to an outbreak in Ontario. A conference in Thompson this week explored the economic future of the city. Thompson is looking to diversify its industries beyond mining. Eric Termendi is a leadership consultant for rural communities. He flew in from BC to speak at the conference and says Thompson has a lot to learn from Churchill.
Technology is the easy one. I find tourism is another opportunity. I think Churchill's done an incredible job from branding themselves on a global stage as a tourism opportunity and tourism destination.
Tourism in Thompson has been on the rise, according to the mayor. Colleen Smook says the region is tapping into its unique culture and pristine wilderness, and it's becoming a destination for adventure and ecotourism. Greek protesters are clashing with police in Athens. The protesters are throwing rocks and makeshift firebombs at officers in riot gear while police fire tear gas. The demonstrators gathered this morning to mark 2 years since a train crash in northern Greece killed 57 people. The protesters are accusing the Conservative government of failing to carry through with promised safety upgrades, and the subsequent protests are some of the biggest the country has seen since the debt crisis more than a decade ago. Finally, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky meets today at the White House with U.S. President Trump, and Zelensky is expected to sign an agreement that will give the U.S. access to Ukraine's rare mineral deposits. It's not clear what security guarantees or military support Ukraine can expect in return, but Trump has said he's looking to recover some of the costs the U.S. has paid out in backing the Ukrainian war effort. That is your CBC News from Winnipeg.
All right, thank you, Lauren.
You're welcome, Marcy.
Lauren Donnelly in our news center this morning. All right, with weather and traffic, here's Corey Funk.
Yes, much more wintry out there than the past few days. -10 right now at the Forks, and that's roughly where we're going to stay, actually, for much of the day. 60% chance of flurries. Windy as well, pretty much right across southern Manitoba this morning. Winds northwest 50, gusting to 70. Should die down a little bit this afternoon coming from the north. Right now, very, very windy hearing right across southern Manitoba. Looking to Brandon right now, -12 right now. You're going to be warming up to -8 today. Also a good chance of flurries for you, but the skies will clear around noon. Dauphin -15 is where you're at right now. It's cloudy right now. Mix of sun and cloud today, but will also clear around noon. Also quite windy as well. Up in Thompson, much, much colder, much different situation. -30 right now. You'll be warming up to -16, but still with that wind chill, still going to feel like it's in the -30s. And that's the case for much of northern Manitoba today. There is an extreme cold warning in effect for Lynn Lake, Brochet, to Dooley Lake, Gillam, Shamattawa. We're talking about wind chills feeling like they're in the high 30s, low 40s today, with temperatures in the -30s. So heads up there, as well as snowfall warnings in effect for areas around Nopaming Provincial Park, Manitoba, as well as Hollowater, and Moose Creek Provincial Forest as well. So around there. So just heads up, you're going to get about 10 to 15 centimeters of snow by the time the afternoon rolls in. As for the commute, hearing about poor highway conditions kind of around the Lac de Bonnie, but even down around Enola and Dugald area on Highway 15, poor visibility, drifting snow conditions there. And one here in the city, we did get a call from Ann, westbound Jubilee, just after Riverside, heard about a illegally parked truck that's causing big backups. So keep left to get around that zipper merge if you can. If you see anything else going on out there, though, give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number, 204-788-3093.
All right, I want to spend a moment here just looking at some photos we're going to put up on our Facebook, that came from our Facebook page. You sent them to us this morning, and we're going to pop them up on our stream on if you're watching on YouTube this morning. That is because photographer Terry Hofer, body positivity coach, was just talking about reclaiming the double chin. So So we challenged you this morning to post photos that you otherwise might have deleted. We all have something about ourselves physically that we might struggle with or might not love about ourselves. And so we might not post those photos, but I thought, let's just do it. So I posted one of myself in the yard, leaning back, big smile, double chin, all those lines that go down my neck now because I'm aging and into my, upper chest. And I posted that one of myself. I got the post of Terry up there with her photo. So let's get through some of these. Kevin just popped one up there. You've been writing in. This is Dean's photo. He wrote in, I love my double chin, and the one under that. He said, happy Friday all. Love this photo of you, Dean. Big smile. In addition, we've got this one coming in from Erin Thomas, writing in, for me, it's less the chin than it is the neck. So that's something for her that she sees. And she's got this beautiful photo of herself and her awesome blue hair smiling away. Erin also said she saw a post the other day. I'll share that in a moment, actually, what else Erin shared. We've got another photo coming up here. This is Joyce Kaler Hildebrand. Joyce says, here's a photo of me, and she's pulling back actually her hair to show us her beautiful face. She said, for me, it's alopecia, wrinkles, age spots, scars. They're not what my friends focus on, but I try not to as well. Some days are harder. Of course, we all have those days. Vicky Rempel sending in a beautiful photo here as well. This one's Linda Pern smiling away in her green sweatshirt. I love this. Another one coming up here. I love this. This is Viv Ketchum. She's got a photo. She's leaning back and her cat is like literally lying on her face. And she says, my cat uses my double chin as a pillow. Super cute. And a final photo here from Vicky Rumpel. This one is Vicky and two others. They're all smiling away. And obviously everyone's chin's on display. Final comment here that I just want to read is from back to Erin Thomas, who said, in this same vein of, what we're celebrating this morning, she said, I saw a post the other day. Someone asked people to write on a post the thing they liked most about themselves, and then on a different color post, what is something that you like best about someone else? Overwhelmingly, the comments about themselves, what we wrote about ourselves, she said, were about appearance. But the comments about other people were about how kind they were, how funny they were, how smart they were. Nothing about how they look. So it's just something to think about this Friday morning, last day of February. Thanks, everybody, for sending your beautiful photos. Love that. It is 20 minutes before 8 o'clock on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and on YouTube. Well, here's something to throw your head back and have a big old double smiling chin about. Let's talk about the Jets. What a remarkable 11-game win streak. Now, last night, of course, we know it came to an end, 2-1, losing to Nashville. But the Jets are atop the NHL. They're in a back-and-forth battle for first place with the Washington Capitals. The question is, are the Jets getting the respect they deserve for where they're standing right now? Edward Fraser's managing editor of the Hockey News. We reached him to get a bit of a different look at the team's season up to this point. Good morning to you.
Good morning. Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks for being with us. So, we had this at the beginning of the year, right? This big streak, and then in the middle, a little bit tough, and then back we bounced, and they're looking amazing now. How do you describe how this season's gone for the Jets so far?
Oh, I think it's been beyond anyone's expectations. I think everybody thought the Jets would be maybe a middle of the pack club, but battle for the President's Trophy race. This team has performed as well as anybody in the league has, obviously, throughout the years. Coach Scott Arneal coming into the beginning of the year done a phenomenal job. So, yeah, they've been great so far.
And what's key to that, and what's key to making it last?
And yeah, that's pretty obvious. Connor Hellebuyck. I mean, this team is really, it's his team. I mean, two-time Vezina winner. He'll win a third this year. As good as the offense has been, it's a balanced team. They've got really good stars up front. They've got depth scoring. Defense is really good, but this team is Connor Hellebuyck's team through and through. So to me, that's the key for this team. The power play has also been really, really good, and that always helps. But to me, if you're looking at the one thing, it's Connor Hellebuyck.
As a Winnipegger, I got to say this is my complete bias, but I always feel like we never get no matter how the Jets do, we never get discussed in the same circles as other teams. It's almost like we're seen as like it's somehow a blip that we're doing like this well, and that, it's not the real deal, or at some point we wait for the other shoe to drop. Is this year, are the Jets getting the respect that they need in these conversations when we dare to start thinking about a cup run?
No, they're not. But it's also fair. This is a team that's made playoffs in 6 of the past 7 seasons, but in that span, they've only made one conference final, and they've been blown out in the first round the past 2 years. So sports is a show-me event, and the Jets haven't shown anything in the playoffs. So they're going to need to win before they get the respect they deserve. Will it be this year? according to odds makers, they've got the 6th best odds. We're just putting together our preliminary postseason power rankings. We've got them 3rd, but they're not even first in their division. We're picking Dallas to win it all this year. Maybe some things change after the deadline. I mean, Kevin Cheveldayoff has done a phenomenal job in the past in adding pieces. They haven't clicked yet, but if he's able to make moves, maybe they do move into that top spot. So, no, I think that this is a team that's shown so much promise for so long, but just haven't been able to achieve it. So I think until they actually do, and to me, I don't know whether it's reaching a conference final, if it's reaching the cup. I don't know what that level of success needs to be, but I do need to know they need to show a lot more than getting bounced in the first round.
How does a team get through the first round? I mean, maybe that's like the $1 million question, but I've been so many years watching the Jets in the playoffs and thinking this is the year. And then there's almost this thing that happens, and it doesn't. And our teams have changed, our players have changed, the coaches changed. The teams we're playing have changed, and sometimes you're just against a big momentum team and you lose, and I get that. But on the other hand, when you look at the Jets themselves, sometimes there's this sort of fatigue that sets in. How do you push past that self-fulfilling prophecy that the Jets aren't going to crack that round?
Yeah, we talked about him earlier, Connor Hellebuyck. That's the one part of his game. He's won the Vezina trophies. He's been phenomenal in the regular season, but he's been, let's be frank, he's been poor in the playoffs. So I think he's critical. What gives me optimism about this year being different is the fact of how good he was in the Four Nations this year. He was absolutely brilliant for the Americans. I think it could have been a lot worse in the final for the Americans if he wasn't so good. So he's proved now that he can play in those big games. Whether that translates to the playoffs, we'll see. But to me, it should give him and his team confidence that they can succeed when it's on the line.
Beyond Hellebuyck, who else were some of the surprising standouts on the team for you this year on the Jets, and who's stepping up maybe now?
Yeah, I think they've got a lot of depth players. There's obviously the Scheifele's, the Kyle Connors, but to me, it's the depth that they've been able to play with that have really made the difference. Josh Morrissey last year, he was getting the Norrisy tag applied to him. He hasn't been as good this year. Depth and the stars who don't necessarily have the big names but continue to perform night in and night out.
Well, we'll see what happens next, Edward. Thank you very much for being with us this morning.
Thanks so much for having me.
That's Edward Fraser. He's managing editor of the Hockey News on live with us on CBC on Zoom. The Jets are back here in Winnipeg, by the way, tomorrow night against the Philadelphia Flyers. Puck drop is at 6 o'clock. Well, from sports to the arts, something big happening tonight in Winnipeg. After years of performing all across the continent, Manitoba singer-songwriter Del Barber is calling it quits. He's going to focus on farming full-time, he says. But one last show to a sold-out hometown crowd at the Park Theatre tonight. He's calling it his one last kick at the can tour. This morning, here's Del Barber with Farewell, God Bless You, Goodbye.
I think I've finally had my fill. It's time to give this city my goodbye. There's only so much money a man can lose, aching that his reasons turn to proof that someday love might not leave me dry. Well, tell me, friend, can you hear me how I'm on a highway with a crooked smile? You know I'm looking for the starry sky. Farewell, God bless you, goodbye. I headed north with the winter wind. Got an honest job working for a cattleman. Seems that with his age he might need me some. I think I'll stay here as long as I can, but I know it's only a matter of when. Maybe you could come and see me before that time.
That's going to be a good sold-out show tonight, I think, right? Personal, and I bet the music's going to sound just that extra bit of special. As Del Barber does his farewell concert tonight. He's playing a sold-out Park Theatre, and that tune is Farewell, God Bless You, Goodbye. It is 10 to 8 on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and YouTube. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Thank you so much for joining us here on CBC. Well, for parents of kids with disabilities, the words partial day might be all too familiar. Inclusion Canada says they're seeing a trend of schools that are only allowing kids to come to school for part of the day. They say it's causing negative impacts for families and kids. We're going to talk to them about why this is happening. That's interviews coming up on the program after 8. Right now, though, there's been a lot of coverage in the news lately about violent crime all over Winnipeg. And in some of the North End and inner city neighborhoods, there have been arson, stabbings, shootings. There's been the police talking about warning of gang activity escalating. And then we had this attack on this elderly woman earlier this week. CBC News covered this story. 83-year-old lady, Victoria Como, who was brutally assaulted. She was just out trying to buy a jug of milk near her home at Elgin and Ellen. Her son, Joseph Forey, spoke at a news conference hosted by the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs.
Coming home from Thompson last night and hearing, that my mother was brutally attacked and seeing her in the hospital, and trying to make her laugh just so that we could get past the trauma, and realizing that I could have lost her. And looking where my mother lives, it's like putting lions next to lambs and trusting the lion not to eat the lamb. That's what we have in that area.
Experiences like that have renewed conversations about safety. Daniel Emerson's my next guest. He's a dad who lives in the area, happens to be a single dad of two, just a few blocks from where this attack actually happened. So he's got a 6 and a 13-year-old, and he's in studio. Hi there.
Hey.
How are you doing in the neighborhood? I mean, we're talking about sort of the environment, the neighborhood, you live there, you love it, and yet there's a lot going on.
Yeah, growing up in the North End, being like a younger boy in the neighborhood, as it was starting to become a little bit more violent, I definitely feel like I adapted and had some of those street smarts and those abilities to navigate some of those, possible dangers or threats. But I truly feel like when we think about like our older generations, such as like what happened on Elgin there, we're looking at like a different point of view of safety where like people aren't thinking about some of those things and those dangers and how to approach them. I'm more concerned about approaching those types of situations when I have my kids. I would feel absolutely safer not having them simply because I would be able to experience something and not have them be impacted by it, right? It's difficult to navigate how to talk about safety when we want to talk about some of the like systemic barriers and issues that are creating those issues in community as well, right? So it's hard to answer that in a good way because we also want to make sure that like we're supporting needs and making space for those that also need to be supported in a good way. And that's not to take away from the assaults and the things that are happening in community either. Like I want to at least say that as well.
But obviously, I mean, and I know you even work in the North End, I think, with youth. So I mean, you have a sense of as you said, the sort of holistic pictures, and then even when it comes specifically to youth, some of the sort of pressures and things and underlying issues that are involved in people's lives. So it's complicated.
Absolutely.
But at the end of the day, there's also when there is this safety issue going on around you and you have sort of a senior that might have owned their home forevermore in the North End and they just want to head out and, pick up some milk. And you said it's hard for you with the kids. Are you feeling like you have to have an increased sense of vigilance around your daily, just living your life daily right now?
So there's just like I would say there's definitely times where I would say, oh, we might not go out at this time, like when it gets a little bit darker. Definitely a little bit more concerning, and but that's, I mean, unfortunately, that's just navigating daily life right now. It's not something that people in other communities aren't experiencing as well.
Yeah,
it's unfortunate that it's continuing to happen more and more and more. And become more current, right?
Has there been an increase? I mean, obviously, we're stitching together some recent things but have you felt sort of a shift and a change right now?
So absolutely. I feel like there's we see a lot of declines in so many ways, and without trying to be overly pessimistic or anything, but I do know that we have systems that are failing community. And those systems are so detrimental to supporting and how do we meet those needs and how do we create safety? Like, I don't have the answer. I don't know. Like, I wouldn't be able to provide a solution, but I know that community and community's voice is so meaningful, and encouraging people to create a community forum and saying, hey, like, what can we do together? Like when we look at like organizational models like mutual aid, like what can we do as a community to support and to encourage each other to take care of this space, and encouraging constituents from that area, from this area to come together and say, we want to be a part of the solution. Let's talk about this problem and find a way that we can make community feel safe.
What systems are the biggest ones when you say that are failing people, that are sort of that cause you the greatest concern?
As a community member, I feel there's when we look at like even the mental health budget, I feel like it's like around $5 billion right now, but mental health is entirely separate. It's an entirely different portion of it. It's a different budget. There's different dollars coming from a different space. And when we think about like how like our brains are taking care of operating every aspect of our daily needs in living, it's wild to think that we have such a small budget for mental health and such a large budget for medical needs and for health, but they're separate. I feel I don't entirely understand why.
What do you hear from your neighbors? I mean, and how already? I'm just curious because you said if you didn't have the kids, it would be a different conversation even for you. But you have the kids, so what do you do to try to keep the kids safe? And what do you hear from neighbors about coming together to try to help each other?
I've never like truly experienced anything like negative in the neighborhood myself, but I've heard it. And when I've heard it, it's been when it starts to get dark, and you'll hear things and like wonder like, should I go out? Like is there something I can do? And then I think, I have the kids, I can't leave. Like I can't, and it's like a terrible catch-22 where you want to do something and you want to help and support, and how can you in those moments? But I don't entirely feel like I've experienced too much. And that's simply because I take my daughter to school in the morning, I pick her up, and like I said, I when it starts to get dark, we stay home, right? So
it's hard too, because you want to celebrate your neighborhood, as you said. You don't want to add to like a stigma, but when there's realities there, then do you find that people are viewing your neighborhood in the same ways, or do you have? We've heard from people who have said that now they even have friends that like otherwise would come over, and they don't want to come, into certain neighborhoods in Winnipeg anymore, which is just like devastating when you think about it.
I've definitely heard things like in passing, but like I love Winnipeg and I love every aspect of like every part. Everybody's amazing. It's sometimes like I said earlier, some of those systemic barriers and challenges that some of our youth are experiencing as well. If we created more space to meet those needs and try to find a way to support, I feel like we would have a better opportunity to create a safer community as well.
Lots of room for us to grow and to improve. Anything to leave us with this morning, Daniel, that I haven't asked you about when it comes to, I know, as you said, I know it's a big topic and I don't expect you to have all the answers, but what are you thinking about and you'd like to, leave us with this morning?
Happy Friday. I'm very excited and very grateful to be here and to share. I really feel like community is the first step, and hearing what everybody wants. Like I can't speak for anybody.
Yeah.
But community can share what we want and what they need, and that's what matters.
Well, hopefully this will be the beginning of many conversations. We appreciate having you in.
Thank you very much.
It's Daniel Emerson, a single dad, lives and works in Winnipeg's inner city. For quick headlines, let's turn to Lauren Donnelly.
Good morning. Families of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls say news of the discovery of possible human remains at the Prairie Green landfill has brought up strong emotions. And Manitoba Hydro's plan to build a new gas plant is being welcomed by the CAO of Selkirk. Your next local news is after World Report.
World Report's coming up next. Stay with us.
On Cue with Tom Power.
The Canadian actor Molly Parker has earned a reputation for playing some complex characters, be it her role in Deadwood, 6 Feet Under, or the movie Kissed. She'll tell you about her new series Doc and why she's drawn to characters who have, quote, lost everything.
I don't know what I did or who I am now.
That's coming up on Cue, followed by Commotion with Elamine Abdel Mahmoud on CBC Radio 1, the CBC Listen app, and everywhere you get your podcasts.
The CBC News is next. Coming up in half an hour, it's The Current with Matt Galloway.
Alberta is making it possible to force people with addictions into treatment, believing this will save lives. Critics worry about violating rights and are asking, why not increase voluntary treatment spaces first? A conversation coming up on The Current.
This is World Report. Good morning, I'm John Northcott. Statistics Canada says the economy ended last year stronger than expected. The real gross domestic product rose 2.6% on an annualized basis in the final quarter of last year. That's well ahead of expectations from economists. Here's senior business correspondent Peter Armstrong.
It's been a while since the Canadian economy expanded on a per capita basis, but the fourth quarter saw that measure finally turn around. Growth overall came in much stronger than expected, and Statistics Canada actually revised up the third quarter numbers as well, and its flash estimates, its preliminary estimates for January, show that strength continued into January. Now, a lot of that will be due to the drop in interest rates, and it's important to remember these numbers came before we saw the real weight of uncertainty that comes with the threat of tariffs and a looming trade war with the United States. This news has pushed the Canadian dollar slightly higher, and it's all just a sense that there's a little bit of cushion. Not a lot, to be sure, but strength is better than weakness, and the picture we got this morning is stronger than most people had been expecting. Peter Armstrong, CBC News, Toronto.
Ontario PC leader Doug Ford now has exactly what he asked for.
We have secured a strong, historic third majority mandate.
Voters don't usually hand out 3 straight majorities, but Ford will be Premier of Ontario for another 4-year term after he campaigned on something that has united Canadians, standing up to U.S. President Donald Trump. The CBC's Megan Fitzpatrick is at the Ontario Legislature. Megan, take us through the election results.
Well, Doug Ford did get that third majority he was looking for it in his victory speech last night. He said he plans to work with the other parties and other levels of government to protect Ontario in the face of those U.S. tariffs.
Standing up for Canada, it will take a full Team Ontario effort. It will take a full Team Canada effort.
The NDP will remain the official opposition. They're on track to end up with about 27 seats. The Liberals, big night for them in terms of regaining official party status. As of this morning, they're elected or leading in 14 ridings. You need 12 seats to be an official party. So that's the good news for the Liberals, John. The bad news is that their leader, Bonnie Crombie, did not win in the Mississauga riding where she was trying to get a seat. The Greens will remain a duo here at Queen's Park.
So, Megan, what are the other party leaders saying about their party's performances?
NDP leader Margaret Stiles, she vowed to hold the PCs accountable, but also to support them in terms of fighting against those tariffs and the impact that they could have here in Ontario. Bonnie Crombie called for her party to celebrate that achievement of getting official party status again. Let's take a listen to some of what the leaders were saying.
I'm congratulating tonight Premier Ford. I really do want to offer him any possible help that we can provide in the face of the threat of Donald Trump.
The 2 Ontario Green MPPs will do our job to hold your government accountable.
Let's celebrate coming back to party status.
Now, Bonnie Crombie did say in those remarks that she intends to stay on as leader despite not winning her seat.
Megan Fitzpatrick at the Ontario Legislature. Thanks, Megan.
You're welcome.
Meanwhile, Donald Trump's focus will turn to Ukraine today as he welcomes Volodymyr Zelensky to the White House. The two presidents are expected to sign a deal with the U.S. looking to acquire rare earths and other minerals, and Ukraine seeking more protection from Russian aggression. Crystal Gamansing tees up the meeting.
And he said that if you plant the American flag economically, Putin is not going to challenge the presence of the United States.
Robert Wilkie has insights into how U.S. President Donald Trump operates. He previously served as Secretary of Veterans Affairs during the first Trump administration and is currently in charge of the transition of the Pentagon.
My personal opinion is that we have to do everything we can to protect Ukraine's sovereignty and push Putin back.
That is what Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky wants as well. But Trump has made it clear he wants the war to end. Trump said he would end the, quote, gravy train of support created by the previous administration, demanding payback for American taxpayers. Granting the U.S. access to its mineral revenues was seen as a way to keep Washington as an ally.
We have a great understanding. I think it's going to be great for Ukraine. We're going to be at the site.
Ahead of Zelensky's visit, he said he wants to ask Trump frank questions face to face, describing the agreement not as a final deal, but a framework. Allies of Ukraine, including UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer, who met with Trump Thursday, sought a commitment for a military backstop. Right now, there is no deal. Ukrainian communities are still under attack from Russian forces. Crystal Gamansing, CBC News, London.
Greek protesters and police are clashing in Athens. Protesters are throwing rocks and makeshift fire bombs at officers in riot gear, and police are firing back with tear gas. But it all started as a peaceful rally this morning, marking 2 years since a devastating train crash. 57 people were killed. Some rail officials are charged with crimes, but the protesters accuse Greece's conservative government of inaction. It's an issue consumer protection officials can't seem to get a handle on. More and more Canadians are coming forward after getting duped into pricey and unfair contracts for home heating and cooling equipment, all under the watch of a government that's supposed to be protecting them. Here's Rosa Marcatelli from CBC's Marketplace.
My name is Stacy, and I agreed to a contract with Provincial Smart Home Services initially at $27,000.
Marketplace brought more than 80 people together to tell their stories about being taken by the same company, Provincial Smart Home Services.
Jim Ball, we signed a contract for $50,000.
In all, they owe more than $1.5 million. They say Provincial made false promises about government rebates, lower energy bills, and more when they bought heating and cooling equipment for their homes, and then lock them into these massive loans with financing companies they never agreed to do business with. Rosalina Pasagan is one of those customers.
It's like this is a nightmare for us. We can't sleep.
Provincial Smart Home Services is now facing charges under Ontario's Consumer Protection Act. The company says it followed all the rules, and it's now shut down. But that's no help to its customers, who are still on the hook for those loans. Customers like Wendell Mohammed.
We're all very angry. In the end, I'm also greatly disappointed in the government system. When is this going to stop?
Bethany Pascudo is a lawyer and advocate.
There just aren't any punishments that match the crime. People are being let off the hook if they're being punished at all.
The Ontario government says it does have financial penalties in place, fines up to $250,000. When asked how it plans to better protect consumers, it didn't respond. Rosa Marcatelli, CBC News, Toronto.
And for the full investigation, you can watch Marketplace tonight at 8 p.m., 8:30 at Newfoundland on CBC TV and CBC Gem. There's a surge of measles across Canada, even more troubling when you consider that the federal government declared the disease eradicated in this country back in 1998. That resurgence is now pushing public health officials to do all they can to stop measles from becoming and making a big comeback. Jennifer Yoon reports.
We're sending messages, we're hosting clinics.
In southwestern Ontario, public health officials are racing to contain the spread of measles. There are 119 confirmed cases of the highly contagious disease in the province. It's the largest outbreak since measles was declared eradicated in 1998, after a high percentage of Canadians got vaccinated. But now, immunization rates have dropped, both abroad and in Canada, say public health authorities. Dr. Nin Tran is the medical officer at Southwestern Public Health, which has reported about half the cases.
Virtually all of our cases are those who have never been vaccinated against measles.
Across Canada, there are 156 confirmed cases in Ontario, Quebec, Manitoba, and British Columbia already this year. For comparison, last year there were 147 cases of measles in total. One Ontario child who had not been vaccinated against measles died of it in May.
I did meet that family. I was involved in the care.
Dr. Sarah Kahn is a pediatric infectious disease specialist at McMaster University.
It's devastating when you have to manage a vaccine-preventable disease that results in a fatality.
She's encouraging those who are hesitant to get the jab to speak with their doctors.
We have to confront this fear of specifically this vaccine.
Otherwise, Kahn says, measles could be back for good in Canada, especially as it spreads in community settings like schools and social gatherings. Jennifer Yoon, CBC News, Toronto.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. I'm John Northcott. This is CBC News.
Well, a really windy day ahead today across Manitoba and a falling temperature here in Winnipeg. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the last day of February. I'm Marcy Marcusa, and this is Information Radio. Here with CBC this morning, and thanks for joining us. 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and YouTube. Well, this half hour on the program, Our Lady Peace hits Winnipeg. Tonight, we're going to hear some tunes. Also, this half hour on the program, we have a really interesting interview. This is from Inclusion Canada. They say parents of children living with disabilities are often feeling, quote, pushed out of school. We're going to hear about a new report they've put out and why Inclusion Canada says partial days can have negative impact for kids. And this is kids being told not just pick up your child today because there's been an incident, but your child can't come back to school. They can only be here a part day. What's going on? We'll hear that in a moment. Right now, let's go to Lauren Donnelly, who's in our news center this morning with updating our headlines. Good morning.
Good morning, Marcy. Advocates of a search of the Prairie Green landfill are feeling big emotions this week after the news that crews discovered possible human remains on Wednesday. They say the discovery is having ripple effects across communities. We'll hear from some of them. And the mayor of Thompson says she wants the city to become a hub for northern Manitoba. Thompson hosted the Linkages Conference this week to explore diversifying the city's industries beyond mining. We'll have those stories and more in your next local news at 8:30.
All right, thanks, Lauren.
You're welcome.
Corey Funkson covering weather and traffic today. What are you hearing now?
Yeah, minus 11 right now at the Forks, and it's going to warm up only to about minus 10 or so today. 60% chance of flurries, and as you mentioned, very, very windy throughout much of southern Manitoba this morning. If you're looking ahead to the weekend, curious what it's going to be like tomorrow. It's going to be a bit warmer, minus 8, sunny is the high here in Winnipeg, and then Sunday going to warm up even more. It's going to be above 0 at 1 degree and sunny. So actually, the overall very lovely weekend ahead. There is a snowfall warning in effect for the kind of eastern interlake-ish, well, not quite in the east end of Lake Winnipeg. So we're talking like Nopaming, Hollow Water First Nation, that area there. 10 to 15 centimeters of snow expected by the afternoon as well. Extreme cold warning in northern Manitoba around Lynn Lake, Brochet, to Dooley Lake, Gillam, Shamattawa. We're talking about temperatures in the low minus 30s with wind chills even colder than that, so bundle up. As for the commute, not too many major issues out there this morning that I've heard of. I did get a call about Selkirk and McPhillips. There's lights flashing there, not too many backups. Treat that as a four-way stop. But other than that, if you do see anything else going on out there, give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number 204-788-3093.
Well, as I mentioned, for some parents, the term, quote, partial day may be all too familiar. Inclusion Canada surveyed parents of children with learning disabilities who they say feel like they're being, quote, pushed out from school. So they surveyed 164 parents that came from Manitoba, Alberta, BC, and Ontario about the reasons their kids were only at school for part of the day. Though it was a small sample size, Inclusion Canada is concerned about what they discovered and about the impact that this can have on kids and families. And they've, in fact, since hosted an inclusive discussion all about it with other families as well. Krista Carr, CEO of Inclusion Canada, I spoke with her yesterday.
Good morning.
So first and foremost, what made you want to go about, looking into this and creating a report of this kind?
Because we were hearing from parents across the country, not just in the provinces mentioned. Those happened to be parents that filled out the survey, but we were hearing right across the country that this was becoming a growing issue. And I think that's underscored now. You see that the Child and Youth Advocate in New Brunswick has come out with a report on this, and the Ombudsman in BC has just launched an investigation into this practice. So our provincial territorial member associations, of which we have 13, one in every province and territory, we're also raising this as a big red flag in terms of a growing trend.
And when we use the term pushed out from school and you talk about this as a growing trend, what exactly are we talking about?
We're talking about kids that have an intellectual or developmental disability or other type of disability. It usually starts by a parent getting phoned to come and pick their child up for some reason. This isn't always how it happens, but it's very often how it happens. And then that gradually, they're chronically being phoned at different points in the day to come and get their child from school. And that typically will then lead to the requirement of the school to only send your child to school for X number of hours a day, or only certain days of the week, or only certain times of the day, et cetera, very often to accommodate what the school needs or can provide, and not for the educational needs of the student.
So there's actually, one of the findings in the report is that there's this gets formalized somewhat. It's not like you get called about something that happened within school one day. There's an ask at some point that the students actually don't attend full time.
It's often not an ask. It often isn't framed as an ask. It's often your child can now only come to school between 9 and 10 o'clock in the morning, or whatever the schedule might look like.
What's the impact on parents and on students in these situations from what you found from families you talked to and what you found in your report?
Huge impact. I think that's the really poignant piece of the whole story, is the impact on families and the students themselves. Families, reported the mental health issues, the stress on the family, anxiety, depression, all kinds of things like that, loss of their job. Oftentimes when they were chronically having to leave work to go pick their son or daughter up at school, the inability to find childcare. So when your child is supposed to be in school, you typically don't have childcare arranged for your son or daughter. So emotional distress, very unclear, feeling very powerless. That the system has all the power. There's no real appeal process, not knowing where to go or how to get decisions like this reviewed or changed. And from the student's perspective, just horrible impacts around feeling unwanted, feeling like they're bad. They're a bad child. I'm a bad boy. You'll see some quotes in the report around things like that. Feeling that they don't belong at school, feeling like they're not wanted, not to mention the educational gaps in learning and in formal learning and in growth that kids get from school in general, from all the the friendships, the relationships, the social activities, the recreational activities. I mean, there's a lot of learning and growth that happens in those spaces as well.
Can you tell me a little bit more about, the concern that behavioral issues are one of the biggest reasons that kids are being told, I understand, that they can only be at school for part of the day, and what an expectation should be for proper support within the system? Like, what did you hear from families about how they're feeling about that?
Yeah. So I think behavior is definitely one of the big drivers of partial days. I will say, though, that it's not the only one. So oftentimes people think it's the only driver. You know, we did a webinar the other day. We had a family, 12-year-old with Down syndrome, medically fragile, needs the people who work directly with her to wear a mask. And that can't be accommodated, so she only goes to school 1 hour a day. And that's been a 2-year ongoing battle. Behavior, though, tends to drive it. And I think the biggest issue around that is all behavior is communication. And particularly in students who struggle to communicate with words, who don't have words, they don't have many words at times. Sometimes they have no words to communicate, or they struggle with emotional regulation, the way to articulate what is causing them distress or what they're feeling. And so all those pieces come out in quote unquote behavior. And it's the biggest challenge around it is that often what happens is we want to punish the behavior, whatever that exhibits itself to look like, and the child gets removed from the situation. We often don't back up and say, okay, what's going on here? What's driving this? What's causing this? What are the triggers? When does it happen? How can we mitigate the circumstances? How do we provide better support? And very often classroom teachers and schools don't get that support. They don't have access to the support. But very often families are told, well, we don't have the resources. We don't have the resources. Yet no one's ever really talked about what would that look like? What resources would it take? What would be needed to provide the support? And has anybody even asked for that support?
And what's the answer to that? What's to be learned here in terms of ensuring schools are better able to support children with learning disabilities? I mean, surely, I think there may be a lot of people listening right now that are quite surprised that the best we can do in some cases is you can't do a full day of school, and completely excluding a child physically from the environment. So where do we go from here? What do you hope we learn from what you're telling us?
All children have a right to education. Under many conventions, the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, and the Education Acts across the country. And we are not providing it to all children. And so I guess what we really need to be doing is, first of all, making a commitment that all children will learn together in regular schools and regular classrooms, and that we will do what is needed to provide the supports that are required to make that work. So sometimes that looks like additional human resources, but often it isn't. Sometimes it's access to specialists that can provide support, behavior mentors, psychiatrists, psychologists, assistance for teachers, time for teachers to plan and strategize, and even to do classroom observation, someone to come in and do a classroom observation. The teacher's busy teaching a class. They sometimes need somebody else to be watching to see what's triggering when this stuff happens, what's the lead up to it, and how do we mitigate some of that? So those are just a few of the things that we can put in place. We know the horridly negative impact it has on the educational outcomes and the self-esteem and self-worth of students. I talked about families, but I think on the school community in general, like our communities are really diverse. They have all kinds of people in them. And when students are excluded, what we're saying to the other students that are there still at the school is that there are two classes of kids. There are some who don't belong, and there are some who do. And that has ramifications for a whole generation of children, adults, and a society down the road.
Krista Carr, thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you.
So that's a conversation I had with Krista Carr yesterday. She's CEO of Inclusion Canada. By the way, 25 Manitoba families were included in the survey. We reached out to every school division in Winnipeg about this because we wanted responses. So Pembina Trail School Division declined to comment. St. James Assiniboia said they would get back to us next week. The Winnipeg School Division said they will talk to us later today about this. River East Transcona said they do implement partial days for kids. However, they emphasized that, quote, these partial days are part of a well-defined strategy that includes clear timelines for gradually increasing the student's school day. A detailed plan outlining each step is developed to ensure that the student's learning needs are met, end quote. The Louis Riel School Division said less than 1% of LRSD students are on what they would call an altered schedule. They said, quote, when a student follows an altered schedule, it is typically part of their individual education plan and includes a clear path to transition back to full-time instruction. In some cases, an altered schedule is also used as a temporary safety measure following a concerning behavior incident, end quote. And finally, the Seven Oaks School Division Superintendent Tony Kreml says it does have students on shortened days. He also said in an email that, quote, for some students, we need to adjust the day to help increase their stamina to attend a full day. Adjusting the day is not about discipline, but rather safety for the student in question, as well as other students and staff. End quote. And that's part of a quote from a fuller email. We did ask for an interview with the province. A spokesperson for the Education Minister, Tracy Schmidt, says she will talk to us about this next week. And I'm thinking that probably as you were listening to all of this, you have maybe questions, maybe you have comments, maybe you want to weigh in. And whether that's if you're a parent that's involved in a situation like this, or if you're a teacher and educator, or maybe you are an educational assistant, because obviously if we're looking at supports in schools, then we have to look at holistically, you know, what can be managed in schools and what is happening in our school classroom settings. So please let us know if you want to weigh in. You can call our listener line to weigh in. You can also confidentially leave us information there as well. 788-3205, 204-788-3205.
Hey Winnipeg, the CBC Kids News Contributor Search is on, so get ready to shine.
We're looking for new talent to join our team, and we're coming to your city.
If you're the parent of a 9 to 15-year-old who loves making videos and is an amazing storyteller,
come meet our hiring producers at CF Polo Park on Saturday, March 1st from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m.
To learn more, head over to cbckidsnews.ca/Winnipeg.
Who knows? This could be the start of something great.
It is 8:25 a.m. right now, and get your lighters up, people, because iconic Canadian alt rockers Our Lady Peace playing Canada Life Centre tonight. Millennials rejoice. They have a Winnipeg connection, of course. Rain Maida, married to Chantal Kreviasek, who's originally from here. So from the 2002 album, Gravity, we thought we'd pull a classic. Here's their angsty, yet some say inspirational hit, Innocence.
Spends his time alone in the basement with a Lennon and Cobain and a guitar and a stereo. And well, he wishes he could escape this, but it all seems so contagious. Not to be yourself and faceless in a song that has no soul. I remember feeling low, and I remember losing hope, and I remember all the feelings in the day they stopped. We are all innocent. We are all innocent. We are all innocent. We are all innocent. We are. Oh, and Gina's losing faith in what she knows. It's a music case, all of her clothes. Thinks of surgery and a new nose. Every calories a war. And what she wishes she was a dancer, and that she never heard of cancer. She wishes God would give her some answers and make her feel beautiful. I remember feeling low, and I remember losing hope, and I remember all the feelings and the day they stopped. We are all innocent. We are all innocent. We are all innocent. We are all innocent. We are.
Peace playing tonight in Winnipeg. I had a lot of fun watching Corey Funk and Kevin Ipateba wave their arms in the air to that. Getting on their old school vibes. It's from their 2002 album Gravity, of course. This is Innocent. Let's talk to Marjorie Dalhouse. She's popped in to tell us what's coming up on Radio Noon. Did you know Marge was back? We're still so excited. This is her first week back after mat leave.
Oh, Marcy, it's nice to be with you.
Yeah. So this is awesome because you're having a conversation, I think, that is super interesting because it's about sick notes.
Yeah, it's about sick notes. We know that there's colds, flu circulating right now. Well, Doctors Manitoba wants to look at eliminating sick notes. Some folks have to go to a doctor, get a sick note to prove to their employer that they're sick. Doctors Manitoba is wrapping up a survey. They wanted to get opinions from Manitobans on whether or not doctors should continue to write sick notes. So today, we're going to have someone from Doctors Manitoba join us during our half-hour call-in section of Radio Noon, and we want to hear from you. Should Manitoba keep sick notes, or should we do away with them? Give us a call. Also text us. We'd love to hear from you on air.
All right. Thanks a lot, Marge.
Thanks, Marcy.
So Marjorie Dalhouse, of course, noon, and the call-in portion will be about sick notes today. That's between 12:30 and 1 o'clock live right here on CBC. Well, from absenteeism at the office, maybe, and sick notes that way, to absenteeism in a different light. School staff at various levels are trying to find new ways to address student absenteeism across the country. More students than ever are missing school. It puts into question the value of education in Canada. This morning on The Current, there's a panel, and I'm mentioning it specifically because we've done a number of stories here. Chris Hicks is going to be on the panel. He's one of the principals in the Red River Valley here in Manitoba in rural areas, but he's also chair of the Council of School Leaders and represents all principals and vice principals in that corner of our province. So he's going to feature, locally into that conversation. So that's in The Current coming up right after our show. But first, here's your Winnipeg news.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Lauren Donnelly in Winnipeg at 8:30. It's minus 12 and mostly cloudy at the Winnipeg airport. A 60% chance of flurries clearing this morning with gusting winds, temperature falling to minus 13 this afternoon. News of possible human remains at the Prairie Green landfill has brought up strong emotions for families of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. Crews made the discovery on Wednesday while searching for the remains of Morgan Harris and Marcedes Myran. They were among 4 women murdered by a serial killer in Winnipeg. Myrna Abraham is among those who have called for the search. Her sister Sharon, originally from Sagging First Nation, is believed to be one of the victims of BC serial killer Robert Picton. Her DNA was found at Picton's farm in 2004, but not her remains. He was never charged with her murder. Abraham says she cried when she learned of the discovery at Prairie Green. She hopes the Myran and Harris families will have some closure.
I'm really, really hoping that the family has some kind of closure on bringing their loved one home, even if it's just remains. My heart is with them, and my mind is with them. My prayers are with them.
Abraham says her family could not hold a proper memorial for Sharon because there are no remains. She says she will continue fighting for any family member who is searching for a missing or murdered loved one. The CAO of Selkirk says he has the perfect place in mind for Manitoba Hydro's proposed new gas plant right across the Red River in East Selkirk. Hydro plans to build a new power plant for almost $1.4 billion. It might run on natural gas. Dwayne Nickel, the chief administrative officer for the city of Selkirk, says Hydro's old Selkirk generating station in East St. Paul would make the perfect site.
All the transmission infrastructure is there. The natural gas line is there. There are buildings on site. And even if those don't fit, there's lots of land to put something new on.
Hydro shut down the Selkirk gas plant in 2021. At the time, the Crown Corporation said it had enough electricity. 2 years later, Hydro said it had to double or triple its electrical capacity. It now says it faces winter power shortages by 2029. Well, out east, Ontario voters have chosen to stick with Doug Ford's Progressive Conservatives.
What a night and what a result. Thank you so much. Together we have made history. Together we have secured a strong, historic third majority mandate.
The PCs haven't achieved that in more than 65 years. Poll analyst Eric Grenier believes Donald Trump's tariff threat was the big issue.
I do think it has played a big role in this campaign because while Doug Ford wanted to make the campaign about Donald Trump and the tariffs, the campaign itself might not have always dominated the news, but Donald Trump often has. So even when we weren't actually talking about the Ontario election, we were talking about the issue that Doug Ford wanted to run this campaign on.
Merritt Stiles and the New Democrats will remain the official opposition while the Liberals managed to edge back into official party status. Leader Bonnie Crombie failed to win her riding. Thompson is looking to diversify its industries beyond mining. The city hosted the Linkages Conference this week, exploring the future of northern Manitoba. Thompson Mayor Colleen Smook says she wants the city to get into cold weather testing, aviation, and modular home construction.
We've talked, with different people, whether it even be building modular homes to go out to the different communities. Because, right now you get homes that are built down south. It's not understood what they even need to be done for winter and for longevity up here.
Smook says Thompson was built as a mining town and mining remains important today, but she wants the city to expand its hospitals, schools, and other government services in order to become a hub for the whole region. Finally, Statistics Canada says the economy ended last year stronger than expected. The real gross domestic product rose 2.6% on an annualized basis in the final quarter of last year. That's well ahead of expectations from economists. Stats Can says it was helped by a surge in household spending ahead of the holidays. And that is your CBC News from Winnipeg.
All right, thanks, Lauren.
You're welcome, Marcy.
Lauren Donnelly and Megan Ketchison and Aaron Roman in our news department this morning. Big thanks to overall all of the people in our current affairs team here at CBC Manitoba. So those that worked on the program this morning and this week, associate producers Angelina Peltier, as well as Bruce Layden, Chloe Friesen, Issa Kixon, Dylan Longhurst, Margel Hodgins, May McKillop, Chidi Akuma, Sierra Sanders, Kalkadam Mulugeta, Corey Funk Abiadiemi, as well as our current affairs reporters, community reporter Shanley Vidal and Jim Agapito, hosts in unit Nadia Kidwai, Faith Fundel, and Margot Watt, filling in on a number of programs. Producers Wendy Parker and Donna Carrero helping out this week as well. YouTube producers Travis Peterson and Kevin Ipatebo. And overall in our unit, Nellie Gonzalez is the show's producer, and Leif Larson is the senior producer of audio at CBC Manitoba. Thank you, everybody, for the week this week. I know, like most workplaces, we've had lots of down and out, people sick, people away, and so people just covering for all kinds of folks all over the place. So big thanks for everyone coming together. Okay, Corey Funk, you have weather traffic.
Yes, minus 11 right now in Winnipeg. High today, minus 10, 60% chance of flurries. Dip down to minus 12 overnight, but then minus 8 tomorrow. Sunny, fairly warm weekend ahead of us here in Winnipeg. Very windy, though, across southern Manitoba this morning. Very cold up north as well. Extreme cold warning in effect around Lynn Lake. Sidewalks are slippery, and particularly on Nopaming Provincial Park area, highways are not in a great condition right now.
All right. Thanks, Cor.
Thank you.
Take care. Be well, Manitoba. Thank you for listening to Information Radio and for joining us here each and every morning. And hopefully you'll be back with us on Monday. See ya.